Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Extra Time presented by In 90 Minutes podcast. Tonight, I have with me our friend David G. Luke's out tonight. The other guys have work really early in the morning tomorrow, so they all had to go. So it's just me and David tonight. Thanks for joining us, David. How you doing on this losing Monday, if you will?
Yeah, not bad, considering, to be honest with you. But yeah, just glad that we can hopefully try to look ahead and figure out something, because boy, do we need to. So hopefully we can look for better days, but not an easy opponent to come next. So I'm not really sure what it'll look like.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get to that definitely by the end of the show. For those of you first time tuning in, we record this on Monday night, release it on Wednesday, obviously. So, like last week, a lot can happen. We made a big signing, and I feel like three-quarters of what we talked about on the show last week, Luke and I and David, had to do with the right back situation, which was fixed in the meantime. But that happens when a show's pre-recorded, especially a couple days in advance. So, that being said, kick it off. Kind of first time in the stadium. uh, you know, fully up and running. Obviously, there was the ticket holder event, the season ticket member event. I was able to go to. Didn't really walk around much. Just kind of stayed in the section. Went to the team store to look around, and then back to the seat. But Saturday, I was able to look around or walk around at halftime. Take my what is he 4-year-old son now. Take him on a walk around to try to burn off some of that uh, energy he has somehow tailgating for what we tailgate for 3 hour 2.5 hours, and then one full half of a game, and he was still ramped up. I just need 10% of that energy on a daily basis, and I'd be way more well off in life. But took him around, noticed a couple things, noticed there were like the big circular box fans, the industrial powered ones, creating air movement in the around the terraces, which was nice. It can get pretty stale, especially over there by the West Club and the East Club on the first level. So that was really nice seeing those. Took a peek into the food court, the Heineken food court they have back behind where David G and David Valentin sits. Um, Pretty nice. Obviously, it was halftime, so it was crowded. Didn't get to really get a full sneak peek into there. But the food options we have, I feel like we have some of the best food options out of really any sports stadium, sports team I've been to, because I feel like most of them you go to, it's a lot of your generic hot dogs, and then you may have like Papa John's or something in there, and maybe like a couple local chain restaurants, and that's about it. But we have a Michelin recommended taco place as food we can have in there, with I forget what it's called now, Black Rooster, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Uh, so a lot of good options in the stadium to eat. Um, Pitch looked nice. Put the new pitch in, new grass in this past off season, and looked really nice. Looked like it held up. Didn't notice any big divots being taken out or anything like that, which is good to see. What did you notice, David? Anything in particular on the positive?
Yeah, I just thought overall, things just looked better, I think, than like well put together overall. Like there wasn't one or two things maybe that stood out to me where I was like, okay, this is much better than it was before. If anything, the fans were maybe that thing for me. I thought the fans were a really great add to the concourse. We're gonna really feel the nicety of that when the off season comes around, or sorry, excuse me, the summer season comes around. It's gonna be the off season eventually, but
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was nice. Security's still not great. I don't know what the deal with that is, to be honest with you. It always seems like on opening day they struggle to like figure it out. I come in through A like a lot of people do, but my seats are right there, so it doesn't make sense for me to come in like any other gate. And the line was just almost all the way down to the corner, before you even like cross the street on the stadium side. It was that far down, and not just the first line. They have two lines over there, and the other line was like equally as far down the street, like by the laundromat kind of area over there. So it was just nuts, and it was just stupid things like security not realizing how many people were in line, not moving people in quickly. If they wanted to pull somebody out of line, they weren't doing it fast. They were like, "Wait, who are you with? Let me." It's like it was just too much nonsense. Like they just need a better and more efficient way to be like, okay, you guys are together. Well, great. Your person just got pulled, so all of you need to slide, to this side or whatever, and we'll take care of this person. And or if you're like you don't want to wait for them, great, keep moving. Like we're not going to keep you there. And then the other part of it too that never seems to work out well is the ticket people just don't do a good job at being like, okay, your ticket doesn't scan. All right, let's wait here for 5 minutes and try to see if someone will see us and free up. Like there needs to be a better system of like, hey, this isn't working, bring somebody over here, whatever it is. It was just kind of annoying how it all works out, especially because we're in a town that does this so often with sporting events and theme parks and all the other stuff. Like there's a system that exists, just use it. Like I don't understand why it's so difficult to try to figure this out, but once you got through all of the creaky stuff like that and everything, it was fine. Like I got into the stadium, it was more low key in my section. Sometimes in the section there, like especially one, because now that they've changed one into that's the one of those special areas or whatever it is. Two through six now, they used to be kind of hard asses about it. They'd make you double check your ticket and you're like, I don't want to go through this, like this is my section, whatever. But thankfully this time they were just very like easy and kind of like, okay, you say you sit here, great, you seem to know where you're going, I'm just gonna let you go and do your thing. So I appreciate that. I just get a little frustrated when they try to extra police it and things like that. I understand for like rivalry games, like we're about to have the Miami game on Sunday. I'm cool with that because if Miami fans aren't sitting in that section, then yeah, get them out. Like I don't want them there during warmups. They're there because they want to try to see their players or whatever, but I don't care. Like my seats are there. You're not going to take my spot because you want to go watch, whomever warm up, on our end. So, but yeah, besides that, I thought everything flowed pretty well. I know some people had issues with like their discounts and stuff like that, like their season ticket discounts. I never had any issues all night. I only bought some beverages, but that was about it. But apparently people were saying like the whole night, the code that normally loads into your whatever digital wallet you use apparently wasn't working for everybody. I didn't experience that, so I don't know if there was just something weird with certain people. But all in all, I thought it was a pretty decent experience considering it was opening day. But again, I don't know what our crowds are going to look like going forward because I'm not convinced they'll stay that high. So it'll just be easier for the stadium anyway.
Yeah, it's like we open the season with a bang. Obviously, season opener almost always is very close, if not a sellout. And then we have Miami that's always, at least all the tickets sell from the club. Doesn't mean necessarily that they'll be there they'll all show up and everything. Yeah, I mean, on my end, I feel like we got at the gate right at 6:30. So when the gate opened, and then
Okay.
so yeah, we got there at 6:30. Like I said, no real issues because we got there right as the gate opened, getting in. Um, I'm sure as time went on, Saturday night there was the issue with that there always is at the supporter gate with with the people that don't have supporter gate tickets and all that. I really think the club needs to look into having somebody like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
They did the first couple of years where they had the queue set up kind of at an L and people right at at the ends of the queue, making sure people had supporter section tickets just visually.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Just they get turned away right there.
It's funny that you say that because in my side they did that, but like they were like if you weren't A or B, they were like double checking to make sure. But like most people can go in A or B, so
Yeah.
I thought it was weird. But I think they were doing the reverse. They were like, oh, if you're a supporter, you need to like head to the other side of the building, and they were trying to send people around. I think it was to try to shorten the line, but honestly, it didn't do much because most of the people in that line were coming through gate A or coming through gate B. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those. It's frustrating. Also, part of the reason we got there at 6:30 was so we didn't have to deal with that. Because obviously, my girlfriend and son go in. They have a woman's line and a male line for who does the pat down. Because at the supporters gate they do a pat down. So they want the women doing the pat down on the women, and then the men on the men.
Sure.
the men's line was a little bit longer, whatever, not a big deal.
Mhm.
Really everything going in was perfectly fine. Throughout the whole match, it seemed to be semi okay. The biggest issue I saw was just so many kits and T-shirts from other teams. I saw Argentina, I saw Barcelona, Brazil, Bayern, AC Milan, Liverpool, and I could go on.
Right.
Those are just ones I saw off the top of my head. And when it was brought up to the contracted security, we were told, "Oh, it's not a big deal." Well, I'm sorry, but to us that have been in the wall since forever.
Right.
I've been in the wall pretty consistently since 2015, and went to a couple games starting in 2013 all the way up until 2015 when I started going more frequently, just because it was where I was in my life. I was in school, couldn't afford to go to a lot of matches, and would go when I could go.
Sure.
Um, so for us people, and knowing, the people that built the wall in our supporter section to be what it was and what it can be and what it, even to some extent what it is, as many disagreements as I have with the direction the supporter groups have went, it's still one of the best supporter sections in the league.
Right.
Um, but to be told it's not that big of a deal is, you know, insulting to me, to everybody in that wall that cares about the team, to the supporter groups, to the people that, that built the wall, built the club, because without the supporter groups and without the people in the wall, the club would never have made it to the MLS.
Right.
And, you know, for him to say that, and it's not a new person that was in there. This person's been there for at least a year, if not 2 years. And everybody that tends to be in the area that I'm in will know it when if you ask me to describe it to you. And then it took me going up to one of the Orlando City staffers that wear the black shirts and saying something to him that we actually, he actually got a positive response for.
Mm.
And to me, that's such a simple thing for security to stop. They have three different instances to stop it: the pat down, the gate, and then when they enter the tunnel to see your armband. Those are three instances you can stop it.
Right.
And I understand it gets, a lot of people flowing through those areas, especially the tunnels leading into the supporter section can be, three, four, five people wide. But the fact that it happens match after match after match after match is just unacceptable.
Right.
Really, that's the only real gripe other than the performance on the field, that I have, as far as, anything in the stadium. Like I said, overall, I saw the changes, saw they followed through with the fans, which is incredible. It's going to help if we have a rain delay. We went through what, 2 or 3 years at least without a rain delay.
Yeah.
I know 22 we had several with the Open Cup, but then really
But
since then, I don't think.
even when you're up there like during halftime and stuff,
Mhm.
it just feels better to be in the concourse when like everybody's in there and everything. So I think you're gonna at the very least you're gonna feel it that way. And then also like the food options, they just continue to innovate on the selections that they have. I know some people are upset that like Papi Smash is gone and a couple other ones like cycled out, but props to Jared Dillon and his team who are going out there and finding local restaurants who want to be a part of sort of what they're building around the stadium. It would be so easy for them to just go out and get generic food and fill it at every single one of the spots and being like, here's your hot dogs, your hamburgers, your this, your that, whatever. But to have places like Hollerbach and, if you want tacos, you can get tacos. If you want to get a spicy chicken sandwich, you can get a spicy chicken sandwich. Like all the different options that they go and give you. And then like per game, it's still switching out and you get a bunch of different options. I just think it's great on them to offer you a bunch of different things that you may not normally experience. Because again, if you don't live in downtown, maybe you don't go to some of those downtown establishments. If you don't live, over by the Sanford area where Hollerbach is, you're not going to Hollerbach, right? So you're going to get to experience that and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just a great testament to like shout out the community in a unique way like that of like offering them a space in the stadium to do their thing.
Yeah, and pay attention to your emails. I think it's in the know before you go email that you get every day before the match, maybe morning of the match. I think it's day before. And they'll have, because there is a circulating restaurants in the Heineken food court right there. What is it, behind 3 and 4, 4 and 5, somewhere on that side of the stadium. And because I'm excited because Cappy's is going to be there. I love Cappy's local. Honestly, Orlando being a newer town, it's one of the more historic uh, establishments in the city. Especially what they've went through the last 3 or 4 years, basically almost closing down, and then the huge effort to keep them in business and everything. So that's cool that they're able to come back. Um, and yeah, the food, like I said earlier, the food's incredible. But moving on, the topic we brought up in the show, that I know people probably want to hear a little bit more of your take on is the situation with Papi.
Mhm.
Um, Basically, why, like, do you think he should have, and I think you alluded to it in the show you were with us a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
Um, but do you think he should have been, we should have let him go in the off season, at the end of the season, type of deal? And then to add on to that, what do you think happens if the worst comes on Sunday?
Yeah, so I think, and I said it on the last show when I was on with you guys, and I think for me it all starts in when he gets the renewal early last year, right? The whole discourse among some of the fan base was he can't focus on his job if he doesn't get a new contract, which I don't believe. If you're a professional, you go out there, you do the job you're asked to do. If your contract says you're here through the end of 2025, great. You're not guaranteed another contract. Go do what you need to go do to earn yourself another contract. And I felt like at that point he hadn't earned it yet. We had a weird stretch of games, especially to start the season. We didn't go through that great stretch, sort of in the, as I like to call, like the early third, whatever that, or like mid, or if you want to look at it another way, like 2/5 of the season, however you want to look at it. But he hadn't earned it yet, so I didn't understand that, and it was a head scratcher. And then the season goes on, and we play pretty good ball, right? Leagues Cup derails us. Then the rest of the season ends up being crap because we can't get back on track. We come into the offseason. We know Muzi is 100% gone because he makes the announcement that he's not coming back and that he's no longer in his job of being whatever he was to the owners. I forgot his exact role, but, advisor to the ownership, whatever. He leaves. And so then obviously a lot of our thoughts are, okay, now it's Ricardo's thing for real. There's nobody to look over his shoulder. There's nobody to get in between him and the ownership group. It's Ricardo's, sort of bus to drive, let him go do his thing, whatever, right? And it was a perfect opportunity to say, okay, Oscar didn't have the results that we were looking for. Ricardo was very vocal that Oscar didn't have the results that the club was looking for. So in everyone's mind, it was, we don't expect this guy to be back. And I think a lot of us were waiting week by week in the offseason going, when's the announcement going to come out? Because all these other clubs are parting ways with their coaches and parting ways with players and everything like that. And there's nothing. And then all of a sudden we get the big player announcement, drop, and, players are gone and this, that, and whatever. And of course, we got some tidbits before, but Oscar's still on this roster. Then we hear that Oscar was a part of some of those goodbye conversations. And so you're thinking, okay, well, he's going to be here next year. Great. Don't know why, but all right. And then you start to see, and I think this is where the Oscar conversation really takes focus, is you start to see this roster go through wholesale changes. It went from the verbiage of the front office saying it was a reload to what I would say was basically a rebuild. I just don't believe the verbiage that's used of a reload. A reload to me is you add 3 or 4 pieces, maybe a little bit more, to bring this team to another level, and that's where you're at. That's not what this was. This was, you killed half of the spine, let's say, because they're either aging out or they didn't perform the way they were supposed to, or they were too close to certain things. And you said, okay, we're going to go in a different direction. To me, that's a rebuild. You're rebuilding at that point. So if you're going to do a full rebuild, why are you bringing along a coach that you didn't necessarily sign off on? Sure, I'm sure Ricardo was a part of that process when they talked to Oscar Pereira to give him a new deal. But it wasn't just his process. We know Luis Muzi was looking out for a guy that he's known for a long time and made sure that he was going to have an opportunity to continue to coach the team. Okay, sure. But then we start the offseason with a very strange press conference that we talked about the last time I was on the show, where he's fiery, the most fiery we've probably seen him the entire time he's been in Orlando, saying that he doesn't have the right players, the front office hasn't set him up for success, he's coming into an offseason where he's going to have a lot more work to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever. And we're all looking here going, are they even on the same page? And then we don't hear from him for most of the rest of the preseason. Nothing. We get goose eggs. They go down to Mexico, nothing. They come back to Orlando to play the tune-up against, Cincy and Nashville, nothing. And then finally we get some comments from him eventually where he sits down and he talks after the the Colorado game. I keep getting mixed up. The Colorado game, he has some comments, nothing earth-shattering there except for his very odd turn of phrase with Angulo, which none of that was true, and it still bothers me to this day that he said Angulo was forced into that spot. No, he wasn't. Alex Freeman was sold weeks earlier, and Angulo was the first person he put it right back, so let's not get that twisted. But the biggest thing for me is his media day press conference where he sits down with Ricardo, and the both of them are sitting there going through the various questions and whatever. And to me, they looked uncomfortable sitting next to each other. And I don't want to read too much into body language, but I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character when that happens. And that didn't seem like two dudes who necessarily wanted to sit next to each other and talk about the future. Because every time there was a big question about what is this team's expectations or where does this team supposed to be in a year, in 2 years or whatever, there was a lot of like weird moments where it was like, yeah, we know we need to win. And Oscar kept saying that. We know we need to win. We know we need to win trophies. We know playoffs isn't good enough. But then there was no explanation as to how are you going to prevent last year from happening, right? I think in his eyes, he looks at what happened last year as we made playoffs because it helps saves his job. But to everybody else, as we know, and we've talked about this a lot, John, it wasn't playoffs. You were in a play-in game, which you lost in a very poor fashion, mind you. And so it asks a lot of questions. So then you go into opening weekend. You're going up against a team that's really young, against a first-time top-flight coach, right? Because Michael Bradley hasn't coached at the top level.
I don't think he's coached, period, other than being on a staff. I don't think he's ever been a head coach of anything.
He was the Twos head coach for Red Bulls last year.
Oh, he was the head coach
yeah,
there? Okay.
Yeah. And the Twos did very well. I think they won the championship last year for the Twos. Okay. So, yeah, he had them last year. But again, he's not done top flight, right? So this is his first time with top flight. And the kids play his team off the pitch in the first half. Completely off the pitch in the first half. And then, obviously the rest of the game transpires. We get a goal back at the very end. It's a consolation goal at that point, whatever. But his first comment in the press conference is, that was the worst half of Orlando City soccer we've ever played, probably in our history. You're the coach, dude. It falls on you. It doesn't fall on anybody else. Sure, there were definitely a lot of players that did not perform. You could easily make that argument. Some of those players were not up for it. But your choices directly affected the way that game went, right? You weren't pressed to start Iago over Nolan Miller, right? You could have started Nolan Miller. Some fans might have been like, that's weird. But then those of us that have been following the team all offseason know Nolan Miller's been there since day one of preseason. He was probably the smarter choice and the safer choice to put in for game one, right? Griffin Dorsey came off a plane 4 days earlier, had 2 training sessions with the team. You knew he was going to be rusty. I don't think a lot of fans are going to beat the guy over the head because he was rusty, but except for the guys behind me in the game who are driving me nuts, being like,
I thought Dorsey actually was one of the few bright spots we had.
Yeah, like his defensive play was suspect at times. I'm going to definitely say that, but getting forward, he was something else, right? Like, and he provided a lot of opportunity there. But then what's the argument for Brekalo not leading the line? What's the argument for Marine still not being up to the level and figuring it out? What is it for the excuse of Brian Ojeda started slow, then Cartagena went out, and he still was kind of slow until the second half, right? Colin Gusky had better moments that I think Brian Ojeda did for some of that match. And Brian Ojeda has been a professional for a lot longer than Colin Gusky has. Marco Pasalic, invisible in the first half. Martin Ojeda, invisible in the first half. Duncan McGuire, I think, had single-digit touches in the first half. All that stuff, totally bad. And then the one guy that the offense is running through, and Tyree Spicer, has no end product. Picks up basically where Angulo left off and just can't figure out how to get the ball to anybody. He's missing the easy passes. He takes shots when he shouldn't be. It just was all over the place. And so then we get to half, and things start to change a little bit, and he makes changes, and he does all these things. And like you guys kind of said in the main show, I was confused as to why Paslich got taken out, unless he had a knock or something that we just don't know about and he got pulled. But I would have pulled Spicer right at half and been like, you don't have it today, dude. You've had it other days. You just don't have it today. Let's leave Paslich on. Let's bring Angulo on. Switch sides if you want to. I don't give a damn. Like, it doesn't bother me. And that's one thing Oscar used to do all the time with Facundo. Facundo and Angulo used to switch all the time. I haven't seen it really at all with Paslich. He loves to keep Paslich on the right, which is, I get it. He likes to come in on his left. But like, if you're getting the space on the left the entire game, why are you not utilizing that? If the space is there, go take it. Tell Paslich, hey, you're just not going to be able to be inverted for the rest of this half, but just cut in a little bit more and still rip it from outside the box because that's what we need you to do. So it just was really confusing. And so with all of this, it comes down to, so Oscar drops the opening match again. This is our second straight loss on opening day after going years and years and years without having a loss on opening day. And now he's inviting in our in-state rivals and a team that is stacked on so many different levels, whether they're messy or messy-less. At this point, I don't care if he shows up or not, because this team is still going to be good whether he shows up or not. So the question becomes, what's enough for Papi to make it by? Obviously, if he wins, he stays. There's no issue. It's whatever, right? And a win would be huge for this fan base right now. Absolutely. If he draws, he's probably good enough. People will look at us and say, okay, great, they're good enough to draw with Miami, whatever. But if we lose by 1 goal, we lose by 2 goals, it's questionable, right? I think if he gets blown out 3 goals or more, you really start to have to ask the questions of, is this the guy that's going to get him there? Because it doesn't get easier after that. Because then they travel to NYCFC, which that stadium sucks. They shouldn't still be allowed to play there, but they do anyway. We're not good there historically, so that's probably another draw or a loss. So then he goes, 3 games in a row without a win? Can you continue to allow all of this to happen, with all the chances that he's gotten and everything that he's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm in the camp of, and I think I said this in your guys' chat tonight, I would have the bags packed by the door, because that's honestly how I feel about it at this point. I think he is on, especially if he loses to Miami, if he doesn't lose big, because I think if he loses big, he's got to be out on his butt. But if he loses to Miami, he should be week to week. If he keeps dropping games, it's time for them to part ways, because there are so many coaches now that are coming available that the club has to start calling. I mean, Nancy, of course, is the biggest name for MLS people. He's still out there. If they haven't picked up the phone to talk to Nancy yet, I don't know what the front office is doing. I'm going to be honest with you. But the other one that just became available is River Plate's Gallardo just became available. He announced he's leaving. That's a higher profile coach by a mile from what Papi is. I would get on the phone with him. Like, at this point, you have to do your due diligence and find out if these guys are interested. And the other thing, too, to go with the other news that came out today, you know how many coaches would love to coach Griezmann if they haven't already? With this young spine that's going to get better and better as time goes on, and with the fact that you might actually get another DP spot to replace depending on what happens with Paslich in the summer. And again, I don't want Paslich to go if he's performing well for us, but we know he wants to go back to Europe. Will Griezmann keep him here? Maybe. I mean, if he gets to play with Griezmann, he might want to stay. But if he really wants to go back to Europe, that opens up another spot. And then can we level up that DP spot again? It's possible, right? So I just think at this point, you're not getting any of the benefits out of Papi that you got when you originally hired him. The benefit when you originally hired him was for him to help you make playoffs, which we've done, and to try to grow the youth academy, which I think we're like 50-50 on. We've had some good success stories, and we've wasted kids' talents and let them walk out the door. And that's the part that I brought up on LPO that I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand this. At FC Dallas, he was so keyed in on, not only do I want to win, but I want to get young kids involved. They were pumping out talent out of FC Dallas for a long, long time. And then he comes to Orlando, and it's like, and I know we didn't have an academy, and him and Muzi had to really build it and figure it out. And I know it was more so on Muzi than it was on him, but they spent a lot of money and time and effort building out the academy. But now that we built out the academy and we're starting to get the fruits of that labor, we're not using them. We're just sitting the fruits in the fruit stand and saying, if they get rotten, who cares? Hopefully somebody else will come up and we'll be fine. And to me, that just doesn't make any freaking sense.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer, because I'm on the same boat. Play the kids. I mean, we saw it with Gusky. He played the vast majority of the match Sunday or Saturday, and you could see his passion. I feel like his passion wore off on Ojeda. I feel like as the match wore on, Ojeda's and not saying Cartagena is not,
Right.
but as a 20, what is he, 25, Ojeda, Brian Ojeda,
Yeah,
you're not
25, 26, something
gonna
like
let
that.
a 18, 19, 20-year-old, outperform you and out hustle you. Um, I know we saw it, down on your end with the passion that Typhy had
Yeah.
with his assist. I mean, I've never seen anybody react to an assist that way. And I've been watching the sport since at least 2002.
Right.
Um, you know, and I've never seen anybody react to an assist that way, especially a consolation goal like that. No, yeah, it's his first, like I said on the show, it's his first goal MLS goal contribution.
Yeah.
But still, the dude's made probably several thousand assists since he started playing soccer,
Right.
Um,
You know what upset me about that too, John, real quick, is like the people behind me were like, why is he celebrating as if he just like won the game? What the hell is that all about? And I turned around to them and I could tell they weren't obviously as plugged in. And I turned around and I said, guys, this kid's been playing for the academy since he was a young kid. Like this means a
11 or
lot to
whatever.
him to get
Yeah.
this. And they were
Yeah.
like, oh, well, we didn't know that. And I was like, well, educate yourself before you start
Mhm.
talking like nonsense. Like, come on now.
Yeah. I mean, even years ago, I followed his mom because I'm like, "Oh, this is cool. It's somebody playing in our academy. You didn't really know of
Right.
anybody playing in our academy." And I mean, yeah, I mean, what you said about a new manager, our academy, if you look at the rankings for what they're worth, our academy's stacked. We're number 1 in 2, maybe 3 age categories.
Yeah.
Everybody else, you're and it's like you look at that, you look at we have Caraballo who's 17, we have Gusky, who I think just turned 18 or 19. We have Typhy, who's 19 or 20. Um, um, the guy that just sold we just signed to the homegrown that nobody thought we would sign.
Oh, Justin Ellis.
Ellis. We
Yeah.
have Ellis that, I mean, if you haven't seen Ellis play, the guy is a technical magician. Not
Nasty.
the fastest guy, not the biggest guy, just a technical magician.
And he's 18 years old.
Yeah. I mean, this is a guy that if he ever starts to get playing time on the senior team, I think will dominate as a false nine.
Yeah.
So like, yes, we've had some success stories, we've had some failures, but you look at what's there now, we're stacked. We're way more stacked than, comparatively to a lot of European clubs, again,
Plus, you
comparatively.
just added all those South Americans in the offseason. Pedro
Yeah.
Leal from Flamengo's U20. You added Nacho
Yep.
Gomez from Velez too. So like, not only are they using the kids that they're finding in their own backyard, they're stacking them with South American talent that they don't have room for down there.
Yeah.
And Ricardo continues to add to the OCB roster.
Yeah. So I mean, the to me the position, and then you didn't even bring up what, I think you're most excited for is the Brazilian trio of U22s we brought up.
Yeah.
You stack all that together with Griezmann, with potentially another DP, and if you don't get another DP, your fallback's Duncan McGuire, which you can do a heck of a lot worse on,
True.
in my opinion, as long as he's getting a decent service, because he's shown the service doesn't have to be great.
Yeah.
He's going to put it on goal.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes people want our strikers to be playmakers and have, technical dribbling ability like the wingers do. And that's just not who a lot of, especially like a target striker like Duncan is.
Yeah.
That's not who he is. He has to have service, a lot like Cara was. He has to have service. And he has to be, he has to find the ball, but the ball also has to find its way to a space that he can get to.
Yeah.
And Sunday that didn't happen. But yeah, I mean,
and to put it out there this way too, John, is like what I would argue is the best U22 wasn't even on the field on Saturday, and Luis Otavio, who's also the youngest U22 out of the whole group, and he's in full training this week. So that's why, like, I kept telling people today on LPO, as much as I want to pencil Gusky in for Sunday, and I think he's more likely to start on Sunday with Cartagena being out, but if Luis Otavio's healthy, he's going to push Gusky pretty hard because this kid was playing regular minutes for Internacional to end the season last year, and he was wrecking dudes on big teams. They played Flamengo down the stretch. They played Bahia down the stretch. They played Sao Paulo down the stretch. Like, these weren't bad teams. And this kid was wrecking the game. So, again, another guy you didn't see. I know Iago, he's getting beaten up by a lot of people online. I'm not going to beat the kid up. He's been in like 7 training sessions in total. He's had 3 matches with us. He's going to get better. Is it his time now? No. Obviously, he's played poorly. He played poorly on Saturday. He didn't play great against Colorado either, but he did have a good game against Cincinnati, which is a game we didn't see, unfortunately, so we have to take everyone's word for it. But I think he's just going to get better, but he's going to need to grow into the game. But Thiago gets the only goal contribution out of those youth, but he had so many moments in that game where, yeah, he probably should have been better, but he was popping up in the right spaces at the right time, exactly where he should have been, right? And
Yeah,
so,
well, like the Jordy Lyons said on the main show, he had that one of the first actions he was involved in. He made an 80-yard recovery to break up a pretty promising attack by Red Bull, and I go, "Oh my gosh, that was Thiago." That was like the little things like that are what get me excited for young players, because you have a young player, you never saw Facundo do that, really.
No.
Yeah.
And Papi loves that, right? That's why he loves Angulo's, because Angulo will track back 80 yards and go get the ball. And so, or like the other one that I liked a lot that unfortunately Angulo biffed, but like Thiago put a great header across the goal that should have went in. That should have changed the dynamic of the game for Orlando at that point. And Angulo couldn't finish it. And he was point blank range and he couldn't finish it. But no, I don't think anybody on the night on that roster would have put that ball across the box like Thiago did, except for him, because he saw Angulo there and he was like, listen, he's going to finish this. Unfortunately, he just didn't know Angulo doesn't finish his chances, so it just wasn't going to happen, right? But like, this is what I'm talking about of like, and this is where I think there's a bigger conversation. And I know it's not going to happen because we're talking about Oscar here, but I think there might need to be a discussion about a formation change. I think what I saw, and again, I'm not going to put too much into it because, again, we were throwing the kitchen sink at that point. We're trying to get as much as we can. But, like, I think Duncan might be better off playing with a partner up front than he would be playing solo. Because then it gives him, especially if he's with another forward who can potentially distribute to him that he's not getting right now. Because there's clearly this big disconnect that we just can't figure out at the moment. And so, to me, why not try to find a way to put a Thiago or a Spicer or somebody right next to Duncan and say, hey, I'm going to flow left, you're going to flow this way. This is how I can get you the ball. But again, more than anything, the biggest thing is, and again, this falls back a little bit on coaching, the DPs have to show up. Ojeda and Pasalic did not show up on Saturday, and they have to start showing up. We have no way of winning against Miami if they don't show up on Sunday. It's just a fact. This game will not be won if they don't show up on Sunday. And so the bigger discussion has to be is, how does Oscar get these guys up for this match? Because if he doesn't, it's going to be a bloodbath. And you're going to see Orlando City fans flee the stadium on Sunday if we start to go down 2-0, 3-0, or whatever it is, right? And if Messi finally shows up and the Messi fans get their wish, we're going to be in big trouble, right? And Crepeau, there's no amount of saves that Crepeau can make that will save us at that point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said earlier, Miami is way too talented, even without Messi.
Right.
Any other team, I'll put it this way, any other team would be on 5 DPs right now if they did the extra acquisitions they did last year. They're not what's the word? They're not adventurous enough to figure that out. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, that's part of the reason I started the show, with Luke and I had talked about it, because Luke and I really feel like we understand the game at a level, a decently high level, from a tactical standpoint. So like what the formation change you talked about, what would that kind of be? I know it's hard to do it without like a board in front of you, but just explain it a little bit.
So I think you can go in 2 directions, and I think it really just depends on, and again, we're putting a little bit too much on Oscar, but let's just assume that Oscar is going to be open enough to make a tactical change. What I saw, and I could be wrong, and by all means, please let me know if I am, but what I saw at the second half was a 4-2-2-2. That's the way I looked at it in my head, because Angulo wasn't playing wide enough to be a 4-4-2 that a lot of people were saying it was. It very much felt like a 4-2-2-2 with obviously the back line with the one change that they made to get Iago out. And then, of course, protecting the back line, you had Gusky and Brian Ojeda, which, again, I still feel like Brian Ojeda needed to be a little bit farther forward in that formation. He just wasn't. And again, I think that's an Oscar thing. I don't think it's a B. Ojeda thing.
Just like he does with Tupuesta. Tupuesta needs to be higher forward.
Yeah, but then the line in front of them, so the next set of two, that's your Tincho and that's your Angulo. And that's where I think he just went to Angulo and said, run around as if your hair's on fire. I don't give a crap where you are. And that's exactly what Angulo did. And that's fine, right, in that instance. But what was nice about it is it allowed Spicer to not necessarily have to worry about doing the tracking back that he wasn't doing well anyway. So it took that off of his plate. Again, I wouldn't have kept Spicer on at half. I would have pulled him, and I would have put Pasalic and Angulo on the same thing and just see what they could do. But what it does in that standpoint is it tells Duncan and Spicer, just stay forward, and then I think it fixes the pressing cues that this team could not figure out in the first half. You saw that the team wanted to press. You got that vibe the entire match, but they were just missing their pressing cues all the time. And for those out there that don't know what I'm talking about and don't really understand the tactical point of that, with a pressing team, Orlando City is not a high press team. We're not going to press like Red Bull Soccer is, where all the time they're always going to be on the front foot. They're going to smother you all the time, and you have to bypass them. Orlando is very much a counter pressing team, right? They're going to look for a ball that's not controlled well, a pass that goes a little bit too long, a defender that's not looking in the right direction, whatever it is, whatever the cue is, right? So when I say cue, that's what I'm talking about. So
a big one that I think people will easily pick up on is the pass back to the keeper. That always
yes. Yeah. So negative passes, we would say, in a sense like that, right? So whatever Oscar is telling them is the cue, and I don't know what that is, obviously, because I'm not in training, but whatever the cue was did not get passed down to this team at all, because they all seem to be pressing on a different cue, and it wasn't timed perfectly. Because remember, guys, the only way a press is going to work is if the entire line understands the cue and presses at the same time, because then you force a mistake, right? So we got a couple early in the game, because I just rewatched the game this morning, so it's a little fresh in my mind, but we got a couple early in the game, and then Red Bull figured it out really fast and changed a little bit of what their approach was and didn't allow Orlando to identify whatever that pressing cue was. But then it seemed like Papi didn't have another cue drilled in their head of what they should do next. So they just went, well, this cue isn't working, but let's just keep doing it in the hopes that something happens, and nothing was happening, right? And Red Bull's bypassing where our press is and everything like that. And the other thing is, Duncan's a good presser. He's not a great one, right? He's not a Ramiro Enrique style presser where Enrique could be on you like this and you're really smothered and you got to get rid of it. Because when Enrique and Tincho would press last year, it was smothering, right? These two dudes were moving quickly. They got on you fast. You had nowhere to go. You were stuck. And then if Angulo was in the game, that was another level of speed that you weren't able to deal with. So in the first half, they just couldn't figure it out. When the second half came around and they're more so playing the 4-2-2-2, all you're asking Duncan and Spicer to do is press, right? When you're in defense. So all they had to do was worry about the pressing cue. And it seemed like Papi established a new pressing cue to get them to turn the ball over, and it seemed to work a little bit better. But then also, who do you have right behind them? Ivan Angulo, who's going to be able to run for days and days and days and days and has more speed than most people in the entire freaking league. Yeah. So the guy's going to catch you, right? And then all Tincho has to do is be the first guy in that second line of press. So to take this tactical analysis another level, right? You have the initial pressing cue. So that's Spicer, that's Duncan. They're pressing most likely a center back and a fullback, or both center backs, or potentially a center back and the goalkeeper, right? Depending on where the ball is on the field. Then your next level, which I would say is more like a half level in this case, is Angulo's running around like with his hair on fire, right? He's going to wherever the other extra guy is, whether that's fullback, center back, whatever. Then Martin Ojeda, which he picked up on in the second half, is pressing whatever the trailing runner is, or what we like to call the safety outlet, right? He's finding the safety valve, and he's leaning in that direction in the hopes that he can turn the ball over. And that's where you saw some of those efforts, like getting the turnovers and Spicer getting in and unfortunately not having the right service, or winning the free kick that we won in the free kick. It's all those kind of things of catching that cue. So the press works and the counter press works if you have the right cues. But in the 4-2-3-1, it was disastrous. Nobody was getting on anybody to go do it, because as much as I like Pasalic, he's not a great presser. He's just not. You can look at him. He's just not it. But when you change to the 4-2-2-2 and you're more aggressive, you're seeing that. So I think the formation has to go one of two ways. I think it either needs to be a 4-2-2-2 if you really want to get on the front foot and try to attack a team, which is I'm more for, especially when you're at home. Absolutely. Jam it down their throat, figure out a way to put goals up. or you go in a flat 4-4-2 and you allow the team to kind of play in a similar feeling shape, right? Everything feels the same. But the difference is that Duncan's not alone to try to figure out what he's doing up there. He now has a partner where if he's not going to get it or he doesn't have the right shot, he can get it over to somebody else who can have the right shot, or vice versa, right? So whoever his partner is, whether that's Thiago, Spicer, whomever, whatever, they have that set up. And I also think when Griezmann comes in, if that deal happens, which I hope it does,
which we will cover here in a little
yeah, which I think that system sets up well for Griezmann as well, because Griezmann can distribute, unlike a lot of the other guys on our roster who are in that kind of role. So that's what I would try to play out, because I don't think the 4-2-3-1 works if you have the best talents at each one of those spots, but you don't. It's very clear that you don't. And now with Wilder Cartagena out for however long he's going to be out for, unfortunately, I don't know how protected the back line's really going to be at this point. So why would you sit there and try to force what you think is the best talent on that line, which I don't think is your strong suit anymore? Because now you're starting to really eat into your depth, especially with Atuesta out as well, because he's going to be missing a little bit of time. You need to turn something else into a strength. So what I would do is go to your attackers, which you are deep on. This team is deep, deep, deep on attackers, and find the right combination of guys to get on the field and try to put up as many goals as you can so you don't have to defend as much.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in that first half, too, to kind of go with what you were saying, because I know it was on you watched it on TV, but it was right in front of me. What I saw a lot of is it was like almost like Papi had us only pressing half the field. The first side the ball went to, it was like everybody pressed there, and then they quickly switch it in a pass or two, or throw a long switch on, and then they'd have the press broke.
Right.
Because there were multiple times, the ball would come to Spicer's side, and then it get quickly reversed, and Paslich is, by the half line, or the same thing with it going to Paslich's side, and then Spicer was on the half line. So it's almost like he was afraid of getting beat on the wing without, with like a long switch to the corner,
right?
The defensive corner. I wonder if that was to try to cover for Marin, who we need to figure something out with.
Agreed.
But yeah, I like the idea, starting off a base 4-2-2, and then kind of switching to that, basically what they switched into when we were on the attack is like a, 3-1-3-3, basically 3-1-3-4, whatever the math adds up to there, off the top of my head. Because Gusky would fall back and be the false outside center back, and then the fullbacks would really be pushed up high. Which I'm not opposed to. I don't know if you saw last week or the week before, kind of I think it was last week.
Yeah.
My proposed lineup, with three backs potentially. But
I wish we could lean that way. I think the depth is just a little strangled at this point. And I think when Iago gets up to speed, I think post World Cup break, that's a reality. Like with Janssen back, with Iago with a lot more time, and I imagine if he's not playing with the first team, he'll get time with OCB, so that'll give him game time. I think that's your perfect opportunity to say, okay, let's try a back three, because then you don't need to ask Dorsey to defend, which I don't think is his strong suit anyway, so why force him to go do it? And then you can take Marin off the field and not have to have him on the field to go do those things. You can have Angulo or Spicer play as a wing back and be able to make the most of what they have.
Exactly. And I mean, Spicer is a wing back I love. Angulo, everybody knows that I'm done with him, but him as a wing back makes perfect sense because he loves those long recovery runs.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, especially in a 3-back system, Griezmann pulling the strings up front would just be a thing of beauty.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, tactically that perfectly makes sense. The one thing about with the formation and particularly who was on the field, you kind of brought up that, I disagreed with Jordy Lyon on. Again, I just disagreed with him. Doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean he's wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
I agree with you. I feel like Angulo was sent on the field and said, hey, just cause chaos in the middle.
Yep.
Just run around, ball chase. It goes on the other side, back off. But if that ball's on you're 2/3 of the field, you're running around.
Right.
Which in that case was perfectly fine. I feel like against a team that's going to be, as disciplined, technically as Miami is, that having somebody like that on the pitch for the full match isn't what we would need. We need, we would need somebody, you know, somebody else to do that. I mean, unfortunately,
Yeah.
at this time, we really don't have anybody else to do that, unless the Brazilian midfielder gets healthy. But you know, and then it'd be interesting. Would you move Brian Ojeda up, or would you put the that's the running the
Right.
back up there? Which
Right.
I would think, based on what your analysis, honestly, is what I'm going off of. Since Brian Ojeda is a little more attacking savvy,
Yeah.
that you would move him forward, because that's what guys were like. Why? This is before the Atuesta knock came out. Um, People were like, "Why is Ojeda starting over Atuesta?" I'm like, "Well, he's kind of a good mix of Atuesta and Cartagena, in my
Yeah.
opinion. From what I saw from the graphs that you put up, he's not quite as good as attacking as Atuesta, but he's better than Cartagena, and he's not as good as Cartagena is defending, but he's better than Atuesta type of deal.
Yeah, he's a
You know,
six and a
as a whole.
half is the way I
Yeah,
like to put it. Like that's the perfect way to kind of phrase it. And to be honest with you, I think Atuesta might have been more beneficial in this game against the Red Bulls. And again, we'll never know because unfortunately he wasn't available. But I think what I could see though is if this team, let's say this team goes up on Miami, right? Let's say it's 2-1, whatever it is, and we want a bunker, which we know Papi's going to want to do as soon as he can. I would make the argument of maybe you switch back to a 4-3-2-1, get as many of those defensive midfielders/midfielders on the field as you can. And I wouldn't don't be surprised if you get something like Augusti, Otavio, and Brian Ojeda on the field, and Papi at that point just asks them to just get in the passing lanes and just muck up the middle of the field, right
yeah,
where Messi wants to play, just muck it up. Like don't let him
Mhm.
get anywhere in the middle, don't let him do anything over there. If you need Otavio to come flying in with a tackle, just let him fly in and hit the guy, because we know historically Argentinians and Brazilians don't tend to get along, so let them go muck it up and do what they need to go do. But obviously I don't want to come out that way. I don't want to come out so passive that we just let Miami do whatever they want and figure it out that way. And again, if Messi's not even in, I still think this team has enough talent to beat us, and pretty handedly. So, because again, they're gonna, between Brecalo and Miller, who I imagine is going to get the start on Sunday. I would hope that he does. Bertarame is going to be a handful alone just for the two of them. So they've got to figure out how to deal, with that guy, right? I will say the one thing about Miami, because I did watch most of the LAFC match, and again, I know LAFC is another heavyweight that's going to be, competing for Supporter Shield most likely. My thing with them that I noticed is their defensive midfield is not nearly as good with Busquets out now. This kid that they got from Portland, he's good, but he's not a Busquets, obviously. And I think there's an opportunity there. I also think Falcone sucks. Anyone who says otherwise is full of it. He is not a good defender, and as long as Miami keeps him on the field, that's your weakness right there. I think you can go straight through Falcone, and I think that benefits Duncan to a degree. But that's where I think maybe two strikers is a benefit for this match, if Papi's willing to change it up. Because if Duncan, let's say, occupies Falcone or Mikael, whichever one he ends up occupying, one of them is going to get lucky and get Falcone, and they're going to be able to hopefully cause damage against a guy like that. Because also Dane St. Clair did not look good against LAFC on the weekend. So honestly, Crépeau got the better of him in terms of, if you're going week by week in terms of who's the better keeper. So I think Oscar has to be open to doing something different for Miami. And if he's not, I think he's just asking for himself to get canned, honestly, at this point. He's got to be ready to do it, and he's got to be able to pull the trigger. The other thing that I was talking about on LPO tonight, why did Thiago get subbed on so late? The guy brought so much energy when he was brought on, and again, it was a late sub by Papi to bring him on, and what was it, the 73rd minute or whatever it was, 76th minute?
Same thing with Taifi.
Yeah, it was like, what are we bringing these dudes on so late for? Dorsey had nothing left in the tank after like the 65th minute, which you don't blame him because he's been traveling and all this other crap that he's had this week. Why are you not bringing those dudes on 10 minutes earlier when you should have, right?
That's always been a knock on Papi, is why, even like if it was a closer game and we were, they scored one goal in the first half, another goal in the second half.
Right.
And it's like, instead of making that change at like the 60th or 65th minute, he waits until like the 75th or 80th minute.
Yeah. And like, for what reason? Do you win money if you keep your sub like late? I don't get it.
Well, and with your formation, what you're talking about too, the thing you got to think, when we're in the attack and a ball comes in, we're always missing that guy behind Duncan's near post run.
Yep.
Ball side of the penalty, of the penalty mark, maybe not quite, that far out, but definitely 10 yards out for sure
Right.
to back that up to hit to get that in there when the ball, which is supposed to be in technically in soccer terms where you want your crosses to go is right between the penalty mark and the top of the goal box.
Right.
So I mean that would also add, again, I'm going very simple here. That could also add that if Papi set them up correctly to do that in a two striker system.
Well, I was gonna say too is that like, and for years this has been Poppy's problem is, and most of the time it's the back post isn't covered, right? They're gonna get somebody to the near post, and that's where Duncan likes to be. He likes that little flick where he can get past the keeper or make some kind of cheeky like hit by him. But then nobody's ever back post. So when he misses it, the ball just goes flying out the back, and there's nobody there. When really in a 4-2-3-1, it's the opposite winger's responsibility to crash the back post, right? But they never crash the back post.
Yeah.
It's like not even.
To me, they are crashing the back post. It's just they're crashing the back post with Duncan's front post run, and then by the time the ball comes across, they're looking back over their shoulder at it versus it should be that staggered, front kind of, dynamically front post goes, back post goes, but that also goes into the fact of what we look like in the attack. I mean, there was one moment, and it was right in front of you, a lot closer to you than it was me.
Yeah.
Where we had the ball at midfield, and I think it was Gusky and Ojeda, I believe, were just knocking it back and forth, and you saw 3 to 5 guys just even with their back line. Nobody's moving, nobody's coming to.
Yeah.
Nobody, and that's been an issue with us since Papi got here. Is our front line when we're in that midfield attacking third of the midfield, the front line travels as one. There's
no individuality at all. It's just they move as a block or whatever it is.
And that's okay if you have guys that can send in really good service consistently.
Right.
But when you're down in a match and stuff like that, you obviously want to see a little bit more movement.
Yeah, and to my point with like two strikers there, I think what happens is the timing gets better because of where they are in the field, but then also they're occupying the correct space. Because what's happening is when the crash happens, they're either too early or they're overrunning every single crash that's happening because they're not really paying attention, or the thought isn't in there of like, okay, if this redirects or if this deflects, I need to be here for it. And so I think with the two strikers, though, it's you can have Duncan still crash the front post if he wants to crash the front post. But then you can have the second striker stand more at like the penalty spot or a little bit in between, so that way they're there and ready to go of like, okay, I can just fire this right away. And the winger is also still available to kind of crash in at a different part of the box so that you have more bodies in the box. I don't understand this obsession with us over the years of like not getting enough bodies in the box to try to go, make a thing. I think the first time I saw extra bodies is that goal that got called back on Dorsey where it hit his hand, unfortunately, in the build-up. Which
and we always overload the box.
Yeah, and again, yeah. So we had the benefit there. I mean, I still think it makes the handball rule look ridiculous, but we won't get started on that. I mean,
it's the letter of the law. I mean, Duncan had one called back. Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah. I just hate how one side is intent and the other side is like, no, if it hits you at all, it's like that's it. Yeah. It's like give me a break. Like you either call it the same ways or what.
If you would have passed it, I believe if I understand it correctly, if it wouldn't have went directly to a shot, if you would have passed it off, it's not supposed to be called. But it led directly to the player scoring a goal, and that's where the issue came. But the other thing about that people don't really see is it would line up good, especially with as much as with Spicer being that wide winger.
Yeah,
is the guy in a two-striker system? Generally, it's the weak side striker, which would be Duncan, which you would want on the right side of that two-striker system. Him being right-footed, generally, he would be the one crashing near post.
Right.
So that would work with Spicer being that wide winger. That would work out well. And then when Paslic has the ball, Duncan can still make that that near post run, peeling off the center back, kind of to the away from center to give Spicer that shooting or Paslic that shooting lane.
Right.
So I mean, there's a lot of positives that can go with that. Obviously, we can take any formation and bring up any positive and any negative we can.
Sure. Yeah.
But with the current makeup of the team, with the midfield and attack being our strong suits, and especially where we have the most depth this year. it definitely makes sense. And with that being said, there's a chance that, I'm sure everybody at this time seen it. If you haven't seen it and you're a fan of this sport, you live off a rock or don't have live under a rock or are not on social media. But it came out today. Tom Bogert and a couple other guys from the Athletic reported that Orlando City's in late stages of talks with Atletico Madrid and Antonio Griezmann to bring him here. Borderline world class. I would consider him, especially a couple of years ago, world class
Yeah.
midfielder, accomplished midfielder. Played for Barcelona with Messi. Plays on the French national team. Would be our biggest signing since Kaká coming here. I feel like bigger than Nani. Kind of the guy that we talked a couple weeks ago with David on. Luke and I have brought up multiple times on here and on the main show that the type of guy we need, the type of guy that has the pedigree, that's done it, been there, going to take the game by the throat and say, no, we're not settling for a draw. We're winning this, or we're not taking the loss. We're going to, push forward and win this type of deal, kind of like, Anani was.
Yeah.
What are, I'm kind of hearing from people that it's exceptionally close.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest holdup I hear right now from people that I've reached out to is that it's, more on the club side that might delay things versus the player side. What are you hearing? What are you allowed to say? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so first, from what I understand, the player is kind of all in at this point. Whatever proposal, and unfortunately, I don't have any details beyond the fact that he was offered a 3-year deal, and CL Merlot confirmed that. So that's out there. I believe Fab also said that is a 3-year deal. I think that's fair for a guy at his age and kind of what he can bring. So I think that makes sense. The money will be interesting. I am curious to see how much we end up paying him and what that looks like. Honestly, it doesn't matter to us at all because it's just coming straight out of the owner's pocket. So who gives a crap? At this point, if I'm the ownership, I'm also offering, find him a nice house, find him a nice car, find him all this other junk, and buy him a beach shack if you need to, whatever it takes to get it over the line. But yeah, so at this point, it really just falls on the clubs to figure it out. For those that haven't maybe been following as closely this offseason, Ricardo has said a lot. They want to replace the DP. When they got rid of Muriel, they very much wanted to bring a new DP in, but he said they were going to take their time and do their due diligence. If you hadn't seen on social media, and if you don't follow Ricardo on certain social media, he was just in Spain. And so that should have been a tip-off to some people if you didn't see that, hey, something was kind of cooking here. And I tend to talk to a lot of different podcasts. Obviously, I talk with John and David Valentin a decent amount. I talk with Mike Spillane with Lions Den a pretty decent amount as well. And we all could start to puzzle the pieces together and be like, okay, something weird is happening here. Like, Ricardo doesn't normally go on trips unless he has something behind it, right? I.e. the Richarlison trip last year when he went to London and met with his representatives. So really at this point, it's on Atletico Madrid. We want him now. We don't want to wait till the summer. Madrid would prefer that we wait until the summer for obvious reasons. They don't want to necessarily have to, they can't replace him because their window's closed, but they don't want to necessarily lose him now. Apparently and again, this is just from a source or two, so I haven't gotten enough time to like triple verify it or anything like that, but I believe part of the pitch to Griezmann was like, hey, the World Cup's here. You could get over here now, get established now, get a couple games under us, do whatever training you need to do. And then when it's time for you to leave to the national team, you go do your thing. And when you're done with the World Cup, you're right here. We get you right back into the team. Everything's good, all that kind of stuff. And then obviously Madrid's like, well, no, if you want him now, you're probably going to have to fork over more cash. I would say at this point, if really the sticking point is whether you get him now or you get him in the summer, I think this is where the Wilfs have an opportunity to step up and kind of do their thing, right? I think this is where the Wilfs can come in and say, okay, is it going to take 3 or 4 extra million to say, okay, we can get him now? Like, what does that look like, right? I don't know exactly what the fee is. I know his value, I think, is like 11 million or 12 million euros on transfer marked. Again, you got to take that with a grain of salt because you don't really 100% know. But let's say the fee ends up being, I don't know, 10 million to pick a round number, and I don't know what it would be, but let's say 10 million, right? If it's 10 million, if they give Atletico 12 million or 13 million, does that get it over the line to move him now? I don't know. Maybe. Worst case scenario, he comes in the summer, and we just have to figure it out until the summer. I know for some people that's not great because this team is a bit short on talent, especially at the striker and, you know, scoring positions. But I think it's doable-esque. I say that with an asterisk, that we could probably get through and navigate to be around the line by the time he'd come in the summer. Mm-hmm. What he brings, because I know I've seen this a lot, and there was a huge discourse on Reddit. For everybody that, again, is a friendly reminder, I'm one of the moderators on the subreddit, so I look at this stuff often. And obviously this popped off today, rightfully so. But there were a few people in there that were like, he's 34, he's old, why do we keep bringing old players in, blah, 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 all this other stuff. I'm going to go ahead and cut everybody off right now. This is a World Cup level talent and Griezmann, right? The guy, as recently as last year in La Liga, put up 12 goals and 2 assists in all competitions, and he played about 1,500 minutes last year. That's a clip that's crazy in that league, right? And it's a top-heavy league, mind you, but that's still a crazy clip. And La Liga is better than MLS. There's no argument there, right? So and he was fairly healthy. He had some bang-ups last year, but not too bad. But currently, right now, he's a sub for them. He doesn't start a lot of games for Atletico. So to me, the whole argument of, well, hey, we really want to keep him, doesn't really hold water too much, but fine, whatever. But this guy's a game changer. And sort of what I talked with John and Luke about the last time I was on the show. Not only is he going to be a game changer on the field and be able to contribute with assists and goals and techers and all kinds of other stuff that he's going to be able to do, this guy's going to be able to lead a locker room that right now feels rudderless, right? And no insult to Martin Ojeda, but I didn't see a captain out there on the field on Saturday. I just didn't. I know he's more of a quiet type, but maybe the captaincy just isn't his bag then. Maybe he just doesn't need to be the guy who wears the armband. I don't know. But this team is begging for a captain, and until Robin Janssen can come back, if he's able to come back at the level that Robin Janssen was at, they need a guy who's going to be able to lead this team, and that's Griezmann, right? Anyone who's known this player and has been around him will tell you that he's a team guy. He wants to see his team succeed. He's there to help other players. He's done some stuff with the academy, just done some basic research. Because again, I don't know all of his ins and outs. I follow European soccer enough to, of course, know who he is and what he does. But I looked into it a little bit, and he likes to meet with the academy kids, and he likes to go to academy matches and watch them, and all those kind of things. Those are the kind of guys you want in here. Because remember, as John and I talked about in the beginning of the show, we have this great level of U22s that we brought in this offseason. We have this great academy that we've been building that we rank, the top spot in 3 of our age groups right now. OCB is probably going to be the most talented it's ever been in OCB's history, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that. I think realistically they have the opportunity to do that. So you're bringing this guy in where everyone's going to benefit from training with him every day, number one. And then secondly, being able to pick his brain whenever they need to go do that. So it's going to raise the level again of what you're looking for. And I think he could arguably have the on-the-field and locker room influence that Luis Nani gave this team when he was here. And I think that's what this club desperately needs right now to go and do that. And then the other benefit, too, is that if Marco Pasalic decides to go to Europe in the summer, because we've heard things that say he may want to return to Europe, which is understandable. What's the level of DP that we could bring in if we have a Griezmann in the team, right? This guy's got a Rolodex of players he's played with throughout Europe. I can't imagine the type of players he would be able to bring in to help the squad. Because again, big players attract other big players, right? Look what's going on in Miami. They don't get probably half the players they're getting if Messi's not there, right? Mm-hmm. He's calling in favors and he's getting people to take salary cuts and do all these things to play with him, right? We saw Dane St. Clair do it this year. We saw, a whole, I won't go through the whole list, but there's a whole bunch of people that went and did that. So this is what we're talking about being a game changer, not only on the field, but off the field as well. But then what I think it is, and it's a risk for one person in the organization, and that's Oscar Pareja again. Because if you bring this guy in, and I think I saw Alonso Inca post about this today, and those of you that know that I'm on social media, I'm not the biggest fan of what Alonso puts out there sometimes. So I will be fully transparent about that before I go off on this. But he was talking about he doesn't understand how Griezmann fits an Oscar Pareja system. And I think a lot of people said what I wanted to say but couldn't find the right words to say. If Oscar Pareja figure it out, then he shouldn't be here, because a star at that level should be easy to put into a lineup and say, you need to help me lead this team, and let him help you lead the team. And if Oscar can't figure it out, then you got to find the door. I mean, that's just really what it is at this point, right? And so I think this is a win on a lot of different levels. And again, the other argument that a lot of fans have made this offseason is that the Wilfs are cheap. They don't want to spend money. They don't want to do all these things. I remind people again, we spent over $10 million on U22s. We're spending $80 million to overhaul Osceola Heritage Park eventually when that project gets approved. If they go and splash another, I don't know, let's say it ends up being $15 million in terms of getting them here, and then another, I don't know, 9-10 million as an annual salary. I don't know what his annual salary is going to look like, but let's say it's somewhere around there. That's another, 20-25 million he's going to spend on top of it. That's spending money. Right, that's what the big boys in this league go and do. So, and it raises our floor, right? So we could, like I said, if we don't get him to the summer and we're around the playoff line, I think Griezmann puts us into the playoffs at that point. If we're somehow above the playoff line, and let's say he still comes in the summer, but we're above the playoff line, he gets us in the conversation of 5, 4, 3, somewhere in that range. Because I don't think this team is a 1-2 this season. They're not built for it. But that does give us an opportunity for next season to be a 1, 2, 3, top 4 candidate kind of thing.
Both seasons next year.
Yeah. The funkiness that's going to be all of next season.
Yeah,
but I think that's what Griezmann brings.
So I've heard, as far as his salary, it's going to be the most we've ever put, from what I know.
Makes
obviously,
sense.
MLS is very, secretive on what they pay players, per player basis.
Right.
It would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 to $8 million that we would pay for his salary.
Okay, that's better than I thought.
And then just from my gut feeling, looking at, kind of the way the market is, knowing, or being told what we've said about his club not wanting to let him go, it wouldn't surprise me if it's around the 15 million mark we have to pay for him, which would, by like $5 million, be a club record signing.
And don't forget too, we were willing to almost offer 20 million for Richarlison, and I would argue you're getting a higher quality player.
I would agree. Definitely a more versatile player.
Yeah. Well, and a better locker room leader, because I don't think Richarlison was going to be that for you.
No, that's what I was going to say too. So you do that, and then we get some of that back with, if Pasalic. I think Pasalic's future purely depends on what he does in the World Cup. A lot less at the club level, more what he does at the World Cup.
Sure.
Unless he just throws stinker after stinker here like he did.
Yeah.
And then he won't even get called up to the World Cup.
Right.
But we sell him. He'll probably, we purchased him for what, 5? You got to think his transfer value would go up a little bit, so we probably sell him for 7 or 8.
I think we could get 10, depending on where he goes in Europe. 10? But yeah.
So $7 to $10 million for him. That's another Facundo Torres. That's another, it's a very high end player, and we wouldn't even need that, because there's several players that by that time, because July 1st their contracts are June 31st at 11:59. A lot of players' contracts are over.
Right.
Or 30th, whatever it is. I get my 30s and 31s mixed up all the time. But the last day of June is when their contracts expire. So there's going to be several players. That's how Son came. That's how Messi came.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of the big name DPs come, is when their contract ends, they come over here on a free.
Yeah.
So, that's something that can happen, that, we could take advantage of at the end, in the summer. So if we're able to get him now, to me, if we get him now, that pushes up, that pushes us almost for sure up to a top 5 spot. If things really go our way, the number 1 spot in supportership, they would really have to go our way, though. Players would have to perform much better than projected and such.
For sure.
So, I really feel like that he could, that him that he could just that he is when we sign him, he's going to push us to that next level, whatever that level is.
Right.
You know, like you said, right in the summer, we're going to should be around playoff line. You know, even with Papi in here, I still think we'll be around the playoff line. We're too talented to be close to the wooden spoon. You know,
Yeah.
but I think he pushes us from a 8, 9, 10, maybe as far as 11
Mhm.
place to pushes us really middle of the pack in the playoffs, somewhere between a 4 and a 7 seed, 3 and a 7 seed.
Yeah.
But I feel like if we can get him right now, it's a season changer. Period. You
Yeah.
know, if we can get him right now, that's why when we were on, we were talking that I don't like the idea of waiting to fill that third DP, and I even said it when I was on the show with the guys from Columbus, and they backed me up. Waiting until summer, especially if it's a player like Griezmann, you're wasting an entire half a season. Which luckily this year it's not quite half a season because
Yeah.
we do the whole month of June we're off.
Yeah, it's only like 15 games, I think, right? Is like the first half, and then it's
May 23rd, so whatever
I
that
think it was
equates out
15. So
to.
really, it's like a third and then 2/3 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's something weird like that. Yeah.
So still a third of a season's a lot. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, David Valentin always says, if you're not in a playoff position by June 1st, you're probably not making the playoffs.
It's not wrong.
No, I mean, we broke that barrier. I think we were the first team to be out of a playoff spot after June 1st and make the playoffs in 24.
Yeah.
Because
Well, and my thing, John, was I was in the same camp of like I'd like to get the deal done now, and the guys in LPO will back me up on this because they were more, I think, like, yeah, we'll wait if the right guy's going to come available. But I always said I was only really willing to wait if it was something like, for example, how this situation could play out, where it's like, okay, we've got him to sign on the dotted line, but he's not going to be able to come until after the World Cup. But at least you have the guarantee that he's going to show up and he's going to be here after the World Cup, right? Yeah. And so, again, wasn't the perfect scenario. I would rather have him now, obviously. But if you could at least get it over the line, you could get over the line. But it's the same way of like, for example, if let's say they talk to Marco, let's say they get this done, right? Griezmann gets done. They can get him in now, which I think the Wilfs should pony up a couple more bucks, because again, they're going to get a bunch of stuff out of marketing with this guy. They're going to sell a bunch of jerseys with this guy. They're going to put butts in seats with this guy. He's going to do all of those things that I didn't even mention in the last segment, but all those things are going to happen, right? Even with those gold but not gold kits, which we won't even talk about. But I'm sorry, seeing them at home last week was ridiculous. But whatever.
It was anger and everything.
But anyway, let's say they talk to Paslic, and Paslic is like, hey, I know I'm starting to get noticed. I want to go back to Europe. Sell me. If the number hits this, could you please sell me? If I'm Orlando City, I'm salivating if I've got Griezmann locked up, because then I go to Griezmann and I go, hey, listen, we're gonna have a winger spot open. We can bring in another high dollar amount guy. Who are you thinking? Who do you want us to go look at? Who's coming available, or who's somebody that might be on the outs with their squad? And let this dude pull out the Rolodex and see if he can call. I know I'm kind of dating a reference here, but like, who can we call in your contacts list where you could say, hey, come to Orlando, we're going to ball, right? And we could potentially get somebody who's more than one dimension, because I think Paslic is leaning more towards the one-dimensional side. Get somebody who's 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional who can come in here and go do a thing. I know my co-host Luis likes the idea of Neymar if he has anything left. I don't think he has anything left. I'd rather pass on him at this point because I just don't think he has anything. But like, somebody like Lukaku is only going to have 6 months left in the middle of the year. Is that somebody you can convince to be like, hey, you want to go play with Griezmann and bring this dude in? Again, not a like-for-like sub for Paslic, but you can make it work, right, by moving some people around. But there's a whole list of people that I won't go through of who's going to be available post-World Cup that this guy could help convince to bring in. Now, the next level becomes, is Oscar Pareja the right coach to be able to convince this player to come in? And that's where I think you start to get questions asked of, would we be better off if we had a more high-profile coach, or a coach that's seen on a more international scale, like a Nancy, who we know has ties to France and a couple other different regions in the world? Or if you want to go bigger, like I don't know, just to put a name out there, like Ancelotti is going to be done with Brazil after this World Cup. Like, do you want to get a big name like an Ancelotti, a Pochettino, one of those kind of guys, right? The options become readily available because not only are you bringing this guy in, but you can say, hey, we want you to come in and build what you need to do. Here's your core. Go tell me what else you want to go grab and let's go do it and figure this out. And then you raise the level, right? I think MLS has still not had their big coaching moment. We've never had like a big coach come into MLS and be like, yeah, you know what? I do want to have some fun with this team. Let's go do some crazy stuff here and see what we can do. We've had a lot of MLS lifer coaches take over both sides of the team, right? Like, Peter Vermees is a perfect example, and unfortunately, that was a train wreck for SKC, and they had to get rid of him. But we've seen a lot of that. Bruce Arena's done it in a couple of the teams that he's been with, but we've never seen a big-time coach come in and say, hey, let's go run this thing. Let's figure this out, right? So I'd be curious to see.
I think David would be like a Tata.
Yeah, he's probably the closest. Yeah,
closest because of where he coached before he came to Atlanta.
Yeah.
But not like what you're talking about. He kind of came to MLS because he was kicked out of everywhere else.
Right.
Hey, I'm pretty close to being on top of the world.
Right.
Let's go here, and it's eventually the MLS is going to have that. If we can't, if the league's refusing to up the salary cap, or my preference is get rid of the salary cap.
Agreed.
Because all these owners are rich enough. I mean, all these owners that we have in the MLS anymore, except for maybe Kansas City, are rich enough to own teams in Europe and do well with teams in Europe. And I know
for the teams that don't spend, shame them out of ownership, right? That's what you need to do. That's what the other big sports do, is that they shame their partners who don't spend and basically run them out of the sport.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you see it happening here too with like SKC and Vancouver. That's basically why Vancouver's up for sale.
Right.
It happened to Columbus before Nancy came aboard.
Yeah.
The league was like, you guys aren't doing anything. We're going to move you. And then, their fans happened. And what was it, 2 years later, they won the MLS Cup.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's something has to happen where it's a coach with a big name that's not here as necessarily a last resort. That would take that team to that next level and compete and win another CONCACAF Champions Cup, because there's only been one MLS team to ever win it, and that was when it was a Champions League, and that was Seattle.
Right.
And their whole season was a disaster after. I don't even think they made playoffs. Compete in that. Compete, when the Club World Cup comes I'm not saying we're going to win the Club World Cup, but, compete with, the Brazilian teams a little better and compete with some of the, European teams that may not necessarily deserve to be there over top of some of the bigger clubs.
Or if you get invited to some of those South American competitions, like the rumors have been swirling for a while, like, Libertadores, or if you're in whichever ones I can't think off the top of my head, but like any of those competitions, like that gets more eyeballs on your club. And if you're able to beat some of those teams, like you're winning on a lot of different levels there, right? And so I think that's where, like, the schedule change helps, no doubt about that. But like, what would convince an Ancelotti post World Cup to come to MLS and coach? Nothing, because your salary cap tied. You have all these things that go with it. They don't want to go through all that. And sure, you could have a great front office that helps a coach navigate all that. But if they're so hamstrung that they're never really able to bring in the talent they want to bring in, they're just not going to be interested. So that's another level that I think nobody in MLS is talking about, is like, why don't we get these like high tactical mind guys? Like, Pep's probably going to be out of Man City this year or next year or whatever it's going to be. Like, why wouldn't Pep want to come to MLS if we loosen the rules a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not the biggest Pep guy, but like, it'd be interesting to see him in MLS. Like, I'll say that for sure. But like, we're not attracting any of that coaching talent.
Or like a Jurgen Klopp, for instance, because that dude's all about advancing and growing the game and all that. And that's basically what he's doing for Red Bull Soccer now, is doing that, helping with the academies at the different Red Bull teams. Somebody like him getting a coaching spot, and I've seen on X some people like really excited outside of our club, fans of our club, saying finally a big, a not big city LA, Miami, New York getting a name.
Right.
It's like, well, guys, we did have Kaká, who at the time was the only player not named uh, Messi and Ronaldo to win the Ballon d'Or in the last 10 years.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I feel like the more players you get, like a Griezmann, as much as we hate to say it, like a Messi or a Suarez or a Busquets, maybe somebody like a Griezmann more so because he's a little more public. The same
Yeah.
with like a Busquets type of player because he seems to be a little more public than Messi.
Mm.
Definitely Son is up there.
Yep.
What's his face in Vancouver? I refuse to acknowledge his name because I hate Bayern.
Oh, Mueller.
Mueller, yeah.
Yeah.
But the more you get those type of players in and they change the cultures of the team, eventually that's got to trickle up to the ownership,
Yeah.
which will trickle up to the commissioner because the owners are the ones that elect the commissioner,
Yeah.
And people want to talk about the promotion relegation issue, which I'm on the fence about. I see the positives and negatives of both, which I don't want to get into.
Sure.
But to me, since we're kind of on the topic, the bigger issue is the salaries. I mean, you have players, and yes, I know the DP helps, but you look at a team such as, take your mid-table. I'm not even going to talk about Premier League because everything's inflated there.
Sure.
But you take your mid-table Italian team,
Mhm.
your mid-table Spanish team, your mid-table Bundesliga team. Okay,
Yeah.
League One we're going to exclude because I don't have a lot of respect for that league. That's PSG and then who else?
Yeah.
I guess Bundesliga you could kind of say it, but Dortmund spends money on players. Salzburg spends money on players. Schalke has spent money on players.
Sure.
Even though they're going through rough times. So, I mean, you take just a mid-table club, any mid-table club in those leagues and see what their salaries are. They're all making, their average salary is probably $3 million. And this is without looking. This is just knowing what the market is in Europe.
Right.
And you take that means the majority of their players would be designated players here in the States.
Yeah.
And the other ones would be, allocated money players, or at least using TAM to buy their contracts down so they could be under the cap.
Yeah, and for a while it was or what we were told it was, we'll take that for a grain of salt, but we were told it was, to keep parity in the league, to keep teams close, to keep this and keep that. But at this point, we can't keep playing to the lowest common denominator, right? If there's teams out there that don't want to spend, like Colorado, RSL, like all those kind of teams that just don't tend to spend, that's their own problem, right? Like I'm with you. I'm on the fence about promotion relegation. I think the bigger thing is ownership just doesn't agree to it anytime soon just because of how much they paid for expansion fees. So like they're not gonna, like a new team especially is not gonna want to go through that whole process. But there has to be a conversation at some point. And again, like you said, the owners elect Don Garber. So if he doesn't make the changes that they want to make, they can boot him on his butt tomorrow, right? The thing about it, and this is why I think it's really strange, especially with the World Cup coming up in the summer, I thought for sure the ownership group would have one more serious meeting about the salary cap and start talking to the MLSPA now. Because if I'm MLS, I want to blow the budget restrictions like completely up by the time the summer comes around. I want it to be to say, at the very least, every team at least gets one more sort of free spot, and by that I mean DP, to just come in and bring somebody in. At the very least, that should be the conversation you're having. And there has been nothing about that whatsoever. And I think that's the first thing. And I get that some of it's got to go through the PA and what that looks like. But all they got to do to appease the PA is just say, we'll raise the minimum salary in MLS by X amount of percent over the next 2 years. And so the lower player on the salary window gets still paid a decent amount of money. It's just, it allows us to bring in more top level talent. Mm-hmm. That's all they need to do. Or like, for example, we need to get away from maybe I'm one of those people that like doesn't necessarily believe in international roster spots. I think it's silly. I think teams have been cheating that system for a while anyway. I think Miami is doing it now. If you look at it, I don't know how they're compliant, but whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But like, I just think it's a stupid system at this point. What the league can do if they really want Americans to play, which honestly, I don't think they're really moving the needle on that anyway, is I think they can just say, there's a minutes cap that you need to reach, and if you don't reach it, the club itself is fined. Whatever that dollar amount is, I don't really care. I don't care if it's $1 million. I don't care if it's 500,000, whatever the hell it is. Just find teams that don't play American players enough. I don't know. Do something like that. Or who don't have green cards.
If you want the American players to play, you know, I mean, no offense to them, but who's going to want to play with the Sullivan brothers? Like, they don't, you know, they don't get the needle going. Like,
sure,
you know, if you're able to attract a Pulisic here, or, you know, McKinney's being brought up, or even, you know, I know the younger Aronson brother, I think he just
Paxton.
came back over.
Yeah, Paxton.
But, you know, Brendan Aronson, or, you know, Tim Weah, you know, especially like a Tim Weah, I mean, that's because of who his dad is, he kind of gets a little bit of a worldwide recognition a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you look at, you know, the top 4 or 5 U.S. players, they're not going to play here for another 7 to 10 years at least.
Yeah.
Because they won't, they're too expensive.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not going to waste a debt. No offense to McKinney, because U.S. national team, I think he's like the most important player we have, depending on how he plays.
Sure.
I think it's how the team goes.
Yeah.
But part of that has to do with playing a, you know, the 8 position. But you know, you're not going to want to waste your big designated player signing on a Weston McKennie.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the international grab that a Son, a Mueller, a Griezmann.
Well, just to make it more cut and dry, you're not going to want to spend it on a like a Konate at Liverpool is out of contract this summer. No team is going to spend a DP contract on Konate, right? Because it just doesn't make sense. But he's a center back that would wreck MLS and, you know, stop a lot of this star power that's coming in. So, for example, like one of the things I was banging the drum for a while, if the league really didn't want to get outside of its roster rules, is allow each team to have one defensive DP, whether that was goalkeeper, center back, or fullback. Just allow the team to have one DP that doesn't count towards your cap, that you can pay them whatever you want to try to make defense better in MLS, because it just isn't improving because nobody wants to spend the spot on it. But nobody's done it, and nobody tends to do it. And then when you tend to use your DP spot for a center back in the league, you get made fun of because it doesn't make a ton of sense. Miles Robinson's one of the few like success stories, I feel like, of being a DP. Walker Zimmerman, to a degree, is another success story. So like,
but you ask Nashville fans, it was a waste of a DP the whole time.
Right. So like, my whole thing is that the league has to start thinking outside of this salary capped box. And in a game, because again, it works for the NFL, it works for the NBA, it works for all these other sports, right? Because they're American sports and we've made it as big and as popular as it is. But we're playing with a sport that's much bigger in other countries than it is here, where, and yes, some of them don't play fairly, and we won't get into that, but there's a lot of clubs worldwide that just don't play fairly and have cheated the rules and whatever. But if you look at some of the other leagues where the rest of the teams, like, take out your big teams at the top, but you look at the rest of the teams, they're still paying their squads a lot more money, they're given a lot more attention, a lot better focus. They don't have to worry about, okay, can I fit this guy under this bubble? No. Can he fit under this roster designation? No. Okay, I guess we can't get him. Like, you don't have to worry about all that kind of crap. But like, the league isn't thinking about that, unfortunately. All Don Garber's thinking about right now is, how can we prop up the few stars that we have in this league ahead of the World Cup and try to make as much money off of it? But there's no thought into, okay, when the World Cup ends, what about making MLS even better than when it started going into the break? But you can't do that with the roster rules. So I just don't understand why there isn't any focus there.
Well, and you talk about parity. You look at, you know, I'm just going to take the Premier League because that's what everybody follows the most. You look at Aston Villa's third right now. You know, I mean, yes, they're 15 points off Arsenal, but still, they're third. You look at Brentford and Bournemouth. Both have been relegated and promoted recently.
Right.
You know, you look at Leeds. They were just promoted. They're 15th. You know, Nottingham Forest a couple years ago was a Champions League team. You know, they got a Champions League place 2 years after they were promoted. So people that try to say kind of what you were saying, the salary caps for parity, yeah, your top 3, 4-ish teams, if you take a 10-year average, aren't going to really change.
Right.
But you're also not ever with the league, with a salary cap, going to have a story like you had with Leicester, I think it was 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
In the Premier League. You're not going to have that. And you're not going to have, look at what happened to Galaxy last year after winning the MLS Cup. Look what happens to most teams, not
You had to
named
blow it up.
Miami
Yeah.
or LAFC.
Yeah.
You have a giant step back the next year because you're not, because of the salary cap, because of the restrictions the salary cap causes.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if we, and I know doubling is a huge number that get us up to like 12.8, almost 13 million.
Right.
Because it's like 6.4 million right now.
Yeah.
But that's still less than a star player on the world stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the bigger thing is that I'm not over here advocating that we take all the training wheels off at once, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't necessarily think that's the best way for the league to go. But, again, like I said, if the short-term solution is we'll give every team a 4th DP if you want to do that build. If you want to do, let's say they do 4 and 4. Let's say we make it 4 DPs and 4 U22s. Like, we're a team so far that's been really invested in trying to make the U22 spot work. If they gave us another DP and another U22, I think this team could arguably be in the conversation of a top 4 team if they got those moves right and figured it out, right? And again, you're not taking the full training wheels off. You're just giving them an opportunity. Or even if we were given an opportunity of, okay, you don't get a DP in the attacking, but we give you a defensive DP. Let's say that rule goes in. Anywhere on the back line or goalkeeper, you can bring in whoever the hell you want. They don't count. They can be, you can pay them as much as you want. Transfer fee doesn't count, whatever. How high of a level would defenses in MLS rise to by adding something like that to your game? Like, I think it would make a huge difference to the league. And then as another year goes by and another year goes by, soften it up. One of the rules, again, like I said, one of the first rules I'd love to see is let's just get rid of international roster spots. By the time we start in 2027, and not the silly season, the 27-28 season is the one I'm talking about. For that one, why don't we get rid of the international roster spots? Who cares? There's not a lot of leagues in the world that give a crap what country you represent. Just come into the team and you're fine. Like, we don't need to know, like, for example, I'm looking at a list right now. Chelsea, Liverpool have 21 foreigners in their team out of a good chunk of their roster. Like, nobody really cares or is keeping track. So who gives a crap? Like, it just seems silly to me at this point that we have to play this game of like, oh, how much were international roster spots going for? $400,000 in GAM or whatever the heck it was. Something ridiculous. Like, that number is so inflated now, it's nuts. Like, all it proves now is you just need a better lawyer to try to get green cards, right? Like, I don't know. It just seems silly to try to do that. So if I'm, again, and to your point, ownership should put pressure on Don Garber to say we need to sit down one more time before the World Cup, or 2 more times, or however long it's going to take. Let's sit down. Let's talk about a couple of small things that we can do pre the World Cup starting, right? I think they should get it done before the World Cup starts, and then make a big announcement right before the World Cup and say, hey, MLS has decided that after the World Cup break, every team is going to get X, Y, and Z, and the league rules are going to loosen up here, and here, and this is the way we're going to run it because we think this is what's going to expand the league and make the league better. What better time to go do that than right before the entire world is going to descend on the United States and really blow out the league, and then remind people, oh, and don't forget, we're aligning with the European calendar at the back half of 2027, so come join us when now Griezmann plays here, and now this player and that player and Messi and this person and that person are all going to be here, and this is a great way to do it. Because again, also for someone like LAFC, who almost lost Bowanga this offseason to Fluminense, if they didn't have to worry about necessarily, let's say we added another DP spot, maybe they feel more comfortable about giving Bowanga whatever money he wants because they can go in and bring another DP and it doesn't matter, right? So you don't, to your point, you don't lose talent off of teams that they don't need to leave from, right? I didn't want to see Bowanga go to Inter Miami. That would have made the league worse. And the only reason why they're going to be able to do it is because, A, they get away with a lot of stuff that they want to do. But secondly, they had the DP spot open, and that scares me, right? But if LA had the extra spot and said, we'll have Song, we'll have Bowanga, we'll have X amount of whatever DP, and we get a 4th spot, then LAFC is going to be over here cooking and doing whatever they want. So I think there's a lot of big discussions that need to take place, but ownership needs to pony up across the league. They need to pony up and say, Don, let's sit down, let's figure this out because we need to strip as much of this talent out of the world. Like, what's the striker's name that I'm forgetting? Dusan Vlahovic. I butchered his name, I'm sure, but um, I think he plays in Italy right now. I have to go back and look, but anyway, like big striker. He's like, he's
Is it like Ivanovic? Is that it? That's the name that's coming to my mind.
Yeah, it could be. That could be what I'm talking about. Whatever it is, his market value is like $50 million or something right now. And so like, sure, you could take a DP flyer on him, but a lot of people aren't going to want to spend that kind of money unless they have extra spots or there's wage relief or whatever it is, right? And so this is where I think the league can step in and start doing those things. And that's how you attract stars to come stateside. Plus, to your point about U.S. men's national team players, we need to be more appealing to try to get them to want to come play at home, but you're not going to do that unless the level's raised, right? And unless people have a different perception of what the league looks like. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do, but I bet what it ends up happening is a big old nothing. Like I doubt anything happens, and it is what it is, right? So,
well, I mean, the thing that they've needed to do forever is on a smaller scale, is take away the ridiculous reserve rules. You basically play 2/3 of a game for the senior team, and you can no longer be considered a reserve.
Yeah.
Or so you're going to have to run guys out against potentially an amateur team in the U.S. Open Cup.
Right.
Which I know is their argument against the cup, but you have to have that. Like it's the oldest tournament and running tournament in our country.
Yeah.
And that's what the sport is its history,
Yeah.
And you have to have your best teams playing in it, or at least your top, your teams at your top level.
Sure.
And when you're playing those lesser teams, look at what the teams all over Europe do. They usually bring in a handful of academy players to play the majority of that game, and if they need a bump, then they put in the backups of their senior team.
Yeah.
I mean, you got teams from Germany playing 6th division teams.
Right.
We go down 4 down down the amateur. So I mean,
and there's no debate of like, oh, they only have X amount of time left. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't. It shouldn't matter, right? Like. If it's 30 people deep, it's 30 people deep. Let me use any of the 30 on there and don't put restrictions on me to say, well, I can't use this person, I can't use that person, whatever it is. Who cares about any of that? The only ones that keeping track of that is us nerds and then the league to make sure that nobody's overusing their youth players or whatever it is, right? It's just silly. Because a lot of fans, especially casual fans, are just going to look at it and say, well, I thought you guys signed so-and-so. Why can't we play them X amount of time? It's like, oh, well, they occupy the 30th spot, so that means they can only play X amount of times per year. And nobody cares about
contract that. And they can't.
Yeah. It's just stupid. It's just silly at this point. So again, if trust me, aligning with the proper window and the proper season is a big deal, of course, but there's still some ways that they need to go in order to loosen it up. And I think post World Cup is the perfect time to do it, but I just don't think this league's going to be reactive enough to try to jump on it when it happens.
Yeah, I think what it's going to take is, as much as I hate to say it, is Miami to, do what they cheat for another full season, essentially.
Sure.
And not get caught. And I really think owners are going to be fed up with it. And it may not happen immediately. Like it may not happen in 28 and 29 after Messi leaves.
Sure.
But I think it'll happen closely thereafter because right now the league's happy because they're like, oh, we got all these eyes on the league. Who cares?
Right.
Well, when the one guy leaves that's followed around for some reason like a god when all he is a whiny little baby, when he leaves and all these, people, all these burner accounts and all these, people that don't care about the sport, they just care about the one guy leave.
Right.
And the league's back to where we were in 2022, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Or 24, whatever year that was, he came in. They're going to be like, which I know we've grown, the league's grown in viewership past what, not including what Messi's done. But it's not what the league. I believe it's not what the league thinks the impact actually is. It's an artificial. It's artificial inflated, basically.
Well, John, let me say this because I've said this. I think I said it on LPO tonight, and if I didn't say it on there, I definitely said it to my co-hosts afterwards. I'm not 100% convinced that Messi's here for the full length of his contract
I
because
don't think so.
my theory is, let's say for example, Argentina catches lightning in a bottle again and wins the World Cup again. If they win the World Cup, Messi opens the stadium for Miami, which he's going to do anyway, pre-World Cup. And then let's say Miami goes and wins one of the big trophies that they wanted to win last year that they couldn't win, right? Whether that's CCC, whether it's whatever big competition it is, they win one of those trophies. Why would Messi come back? If you just won World Cup again, you just won Miami one or two more trophies, however many trophies they end up collecting. You won them all these trophies. You opened the new stadium like you promised you were going to do. You're already getting paid a ton of money from all these different, because all of his numbers came out, what was it, today or yesterday, where they talked about all of the benefits that he's getting and all the different stuff. And then we know he's got post-playing career benefits where he gets, minority stake in the club and, whatever it is. Why would you keep playing? Like, honestly, at that point, like, why would you put your body through that? Why would you go through any of that stuff at that point? So I'm sure the league is begging him, don't retire, like stick around for as long as you can because we want to get as many eyeballs on you. But if I'm the league, I start thinking now, if this season goes 100% right for Messi and Miami, which I hope it doesn't, but who knows? If it goes 100% right for them, is he around like next year? Like maybe he plays the silly season and he's done. Like, I don't know. Like that's a real possibility. I think that could happen where he comes in and he says, hey, listen, I'm done. Because there's a lot of thought that Ronaldo is going to do something similar, right? This World Cup is probably his swan song. He's coming towards the end of what he wants to do in Saudi Arabia at this point. Like, do they need to keep playing? Like, I think there'd be some kind of grace in them both retiring around the same time, right? They've been rivals for basically their entire careers at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if he decides, hey, I'm not going to see the end out of this contract. I'm going to go ahead and just give whatever money I need to give back to retire, but I'll go ahead and take my options in your club and whatever else now, right? And so when that happens, I think Don Garber might be shitting a brick a little bit, for lack of a better phrase. Like, I think he's going to be looking at it going, great, who's our cash cow now? And then my second part to that I've told a lot of people is, I think Don Garber retires. Because I think at that point, what does Don have to give at that rate? Yeah. He's helped bring Messi in. He's helped expand the league to 30 teams. He's helped do all those things. What else is there for him to accomplish at that point? And he saw another World Cup. He saw a World Cup through in the United States, right? From his domestic league side. So what else is there for him to do? So I think you see Messi go, Don Garber retires, Cristiano Ronaldo, again, not in our country, but fine, whatever. He retires as well, because I'm not convinced he's going to ever come to MLS at this point. So like, I think...
Not with what Saudi's giving, and nobody in their right mind would do it.
Right, exactly. Unless he really was just like, I don't care about the money anymore, and I just want to play one more year in the States. But I just don't think it's worth it enough for him to do it. Like, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. Yeah. But anyway, like, I could see all that happening, and then what does the league do? Then the league is caught sort of with their pants down, and it's like, well, what do you do to go fix that? And I think that's where you have to fundamentally change the way the league operates and say, get rid of the caps, get rid of this, get rid of all that. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, because I think post-World Cup, depending on how a couple things go, how the U.S. performs, how, Argentina does, because, again, Messi's on them, so it'll be interesting to see. I think that all comes into account of what the league's going to look like post-break and everything.
Yeah, no, definitely. The league really mishandled Messi coming here. Really, mishandled how all that was. One, everybody knows Messi is not a social butterfly. No. He's very introverted.
No.
He's not going to do what Ronaldo's doing for Saudi. He's not going to even be like a Neymar, which is even more of a when it comes to the media and stuff. Even kind of reclusive when it comes to the media. Yeah. And then just how they're unwilling to, they upped the cap I think it was $1 million this year almost.
Yeah.
From like 5'6" to 6'4". But again, like in Europe, that's one like starting 11 player to $6.4 million, really.
Yeah.
And, the DPs work. I like your ideas of a defensive DP or an extra DP. The restrictions on the U22s, even though they open it up a little bit. They're still pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to exactly go back and look at it to see what it is, but I know they can only be up to a certain salary.
Well, it's the
Uh,
same thing with homegrowns. Like I think
yeah,
the cap on homegrowns is a joke. Like if you have a homegrown that's performing really well, for example, like Philly and Kevin Sullivan, who's going to go to Manchester City eventually, but like why
sure.
can't Philly pay him $500,000 a year? I don't care if he's 16 years old. If you think he's worth $500,000 a year, then pay him $500,000 a year. I don't give a darn, because that probably would have gotten Justin Ellis over the line sooner for us than when he did if we were able to give him more money. Because then we could have said, hey, if you stick around here, we'll pay you $400,000. And then when that big club comes calling, we'll sell you. But for now, you can be content because you're 17 years old and you're making $400,000, right? Like, what's to hate about that? So, like, honestly.
And I mean, I'm honestly surprised that we got him over the line because of the interaction I had with him, me and my son had with him at an Orlando City B match last year. Just
Okay.
not that he did anything wrong. It was just like, so almost everybody that follows the show knows that my son and Thomas Williams, had a friendship.
Sure.
So we were up there, and Thomas was one of the first people over. It had been literally exactly a year since they took a picture together last.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest, get a picture with the players, get
Right.
autographs, whatever. I'm just like, hey, good game, guys. Like, that's it,
Right.
But Thomas was a little different. Like, hey, well, then there was family of one of the players. I'm not sure which player it was, but one of the players was down from us.
Okay.
And, Colin comes over, Justin comes over. And when Justin came over, I'm like, give him 5, Barrett. And Justin gives him a 5. And then the family's like, no, take a picture with him. Take a picture with him. So, I'm just like, you know how I am. I crack a joke. I'm like, yeah, he's going to be, challenging you for your spot when he gets old enough or whatever. You're still going to be there. And I didn't even get like a fake laugh or anything. I just got like that teenage eye roll type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, maybe and I kind of intentionally did that to kind of get a feeling whether he was going to,
Sure.
and it was just like, I can say that now because we did end up signing him.
Right.
But it was just like the feeling I got from that interaction with him was like, he really doesn't want to sign with us, does he?
Yeah.
Not knowing the inner workings of what they were negotiating and everything. But he's one I really did not think that we were going to get over because of what everybody's, the ceiling everybody says he has, and just his technical. I mean, if anybody gets a chance to go to an OCB match and watch him play,
Yeah.
it is and it's not like technical, like a Caraballo will make everybody ooh and ah, or Taifi will make everybody ooh and ah because they'll, do a couple step overs, get a guy to bite, and then go by them.
Right.
But if you truly enjoy somebody that's technically sound and he's a very European player for being brought up here.
Sure.
Is the best way to explain it. The dude knows the game. The dude knows where the ball needs to go, knows where his position needs to go.
Yeah.
And he's like a number 10 that plays a forward. That's the best way to describe him.
Yeah, and to your point, for a while, I think he was holding off because there was European interest for a bit, and especially when they went and won the Academy tournament, was the U19s or U18s, when they won that tournament,
U19s.
there was a ton of international teams that were part of that tournament, and scouts saw and noticed, right? And so from what I was told, they were waiting for basically an offer to come in. He was going to let his OCB contract run out, and he was just going to go to Europe.
Yeah.
And obviously the club didn't want that to happen for a lot of different reasons. But I think what ended up holding him back, unfortunately, was production-wise with OCB, the numbers just weren't there enough, I think, for some of these bigger teams to be like, okay, let's go ahead and just sign him up from here. And so from what I was told by different sources, the biggest hang-up and why it took so long, because I remember announcing it on LPO like a month ago, and everyone was like, no, he's full of crap. There's no way it's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But the thing I had heard was that it was basically done and dusted in Mexico. But the problem was they were squabbling over length of contract because Orlando City wanted to lock him up for a much longer contract because they didn't want a Freeman problem like they had with Alex Freeman. But of course, Ellis wanted the freedom to be like, no, if I ball out, I want to get out of here, which is understandable, right? Because he didn't want to really sign in the first place. But I think once he saw the options kind of ran out and what that looked like, he was like, okay, let me accept, what the club is going to offer me now. And honestly, for example, if Griezmann gets over the line, Justin Ellis is going to be spoiled by going under the tutelage of that guy. Are you kidding? Like, talk about all the effort you can get. And then I like I said on a bunch of different outlets, over the last couple days since the Ellis news got announced, that dude gets 5 goal contributions on the first team, and then gets like a handful more with OCB. He's gone. Like, he's going to get sold. Like, some European club is going to come calling for this kid, and they're going to grab him. Like, I have no doubt in my mind about that. At this point, I just think, what is the dollar amount going to be when they come in and grab this guy? And now Orlando City's going to be able to get a profit and, all that kind of stuff. But again, I think the other thing that helped and maybe convinced him a little bit is that we sold Alex Freeman. And I think there were a fair amount of kids, because I had heard this from sort of the player side of, sometimes when I hear from sources and things like that, some players were worried that this team kept saying, hey, we'll sell you when the time's right. And they weren't convinced that this club was going to sell you. They saw, some of them remember the Kyle Larin stuff. They were young, but some of them remember the Kyle Larin stuff and how that went down. Again, college player, but still, we developed
different owners, different management, and all that.
For sure. But there wasn't a lot of, like, they saw the Granados move, but like, he went from OCB straight over, so he never saw or looked at the first team. So I'm sure there was a bit of trepidation about, like, okay, well, is this club going to do right by me? Like, and then I think a lot of them were looking to Alex to go, are they going to get this guy out of here if he wants to go, and all that kind of stuff. And thankfully Alex did right by us, and we got money out of it and what it looked like. But I think it gave a new sense of confidence to all those kids, to Taifi, to Gusky, Justin Ellis, and then eventually when I think Pedro Leal will get an opportunity when he balls out with OCB, because I'm convinced he's going to, they're all going to be like, okay, great, I'm going to get an opportunity, and then I'm going to get sold when it's time for me to get sold. Like, Caraballo, I think, could make us a whole bunch of money and go exactly where he wants to go. Because the kid's only 17 still, and he balls like nobody's business. Like,
18, I think 18 later.
Oh, did he turn 18 finally? Okay, so whatever.
Later this year.
Yeah, so like, I have no doubt in my mind that they're all going to progress and get to that level. But I think a lot of, again, like I said, a lot of the reservation was like, but is Orlando City willing to do that? And I think Ricardo has now shown his hand to say, yeah, we'll sell you. Like, as long as the price is decent, we'll sell you. We've got a factory of kids we're going through now. We can go and do that. I mean, look at Obed Vargas, gets sold to Atleti for a decent chunk of change, and Seattle is laughing all the way to the bank because they developed this kid from basically nothing. So, because again, now that's a team that's a factory. Them, Philadelphia, FC Dallas, New York Red Bulls. We just got the hurting from Red Bulls Academy this weekend, right? Like, they're all developing these kids. And so if we want to be in that conversation, we got to sell. And I think so far we're off to the right point. So I'd love to see Justin Ellis contribute, though. That's the next step, right? Is Papi going to play him? Is he going to get opportunities? Is he going to be able to get into games? Because honestly, I felt like Saturday when we were playing behind and we couldn't do much, that might have been a good game for him to get into. But I mean, at least we got one back and whatever. But I'm saying if we get blown out sometimes this season, might be good games for him to get into for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it, FC Cincinnati got a couple players from our academy.
Yeah.
And I did some research on it and found out that they changed academies, changed clubs, whatever.
Yeah.
Because they weren't getting playing time. And it's like FC Cincinnati's acting like, and they're quality, youth prospects, but Cincinnati's acting like they're these massive, like they got Caraballo from us essentially. And it's like, no, that's our bench players for U17s. Like, pipe down a little bit. Or U16s, I think it was.
Right.
But yeah, and I mean, eventually it comes to the point where, you have these guys, and we're really about 10, maybe 15 years away from it.
Yeah.
Where you get the guys that are, no, I want to lead Orlando City to great things, where it's, your 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that, because most of these kids still, especially like Ellis and Gusky. Gusky might be the first one, I will say, because he has family that's went through the system.
Sure.
He had his 3 brothers make it up to OCB, I believe, or 2 brothers make it up to OCB.
Yeah.
So he may be one that, maybe sticks around a little longer than most people should.
Sure.
Thinks he should. But eventually it's going to come a time where, and it happens in Europe, it's happening in, Philadelphia, with the older Sullivan brother. It happened with
kind
of it kind of happened in Dallas with Ferreira,
Mm,
where he stuck around. I mean, think about where his market value was,
I remember.
4 or 5
Yeah.
years ago.
He was like the next big thing.
Yeah. And part of that has to do with the salary cap, but also part of that just has to do with the heritage the club has.
Yeah.
Because like for instance, and I know he's only 4, but right now all my 4-year-olds about is Orlando City.
That's awesome.
He literally was tearing up because we lost. He didn't really care, but he
Right.
still gets upset. He had a good time at the match and everything, but teared up, got upset because we lost. When that first goal went in, he started to cry. I mean,
Mm,
that's how, that's the investment. And you see it not just in my son and other kids that,
yeah.
you know, haven't known a life like, Gusky or Typhy or even Thomas Williams that we just sold,
Yeah.
um, or even to a certain extent Caraballo, because Caraballo, you know, when we've been around for 14 years, this is our 15th season. He was, 2, 3, 4 years old when the club moved, when we got the USL club here.
Right.
So, it's not the, ingrained in them like it is with clubs in Europe and clubs of South America that are in their fourth, fifth, sixth generation, where you get like a Facundo Torres that stays there until they win a championship and then he moves on,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And that's when it gets really exciting, is when you get players like that come up and, imagine talking about a Caraballo or, I'll say the big 4 we have right now, Typhy, 5 really, Typhy, Gusky, Caraballo, Ellis, maybe it is 4. I don't know. It's getting late at night.
Yeah.
But the youth guys we have that are 21 and younger right now,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
that
Otero is probably the other one.
Otero, you could include
Yeah.
Otero,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
he's a little bit older.
Yeah.
Um,
You got 2 more goalkeepers behind him too, and
yeah,
Tristan Himes and Juan Rojas. So,
and we could even have had a third in Zach. He's with
oh,
Colorado now.
the kid that went to Colorado. I remember
Yeah,
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Granadaho or something like that. It's
Yeah.
something that's Mike's name, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, and he ended up going. I think he went because of a father's. From what I understood, it was his dad's job got moved or something. It wasn't
I
necessarily
had heard
playing.
something similar like that. Yeah, he just needed to go or something because
Yeah,
of
it
family.
was a family move, not a
Yeah.
move on his part. But
Yeah.
still, like when you have guys like that, and then the next wave comes up that all they've known is Orlando City, and they have parents that are I take it a little overboard, but you have guys that parents that are passionate for the club and raise their kids going to matches and all that stuff. You see reactions like what Taifi had
Yeah.
when he just got an assist.
Right.
It was a great assist. It was a good one-touch pass,
Yeah.
but he just got an assist, and it's that's the stuff that really gets exciting. That it really kind of makes you take a step back and be like, does the senior team situation suck? Yes, but you know, even with not even the senior team's coaching situation suck right now.
Right.
Yes, but it's one of those that you look at the grand scheme of things, and you look at a club like Miami, or a club like LAFC, which the LA Academy should be the best in the nation by
Yeah.
far because of the just they have more of a soccer heritage
Sure.
because of the influence Mexico has on LA.
Yeah.
And they don't. We have, ranking wise, one of the top academies in the nation, and we've
Right.
really only had an academy for 5, 6 years.
Right.
So it's that part's really exciting. I know Ricardo is very invested. Every OCB match I've been to, he's been at, unless the team was out of town.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it because I know in seasons prior I catch like 1 or 2 a year normally. But this year I'm really trying to make a concerted effort, not only because I wanted to cover it for LPO, because I just don't think it's a very well covered thing, and I think the kids deserve it. honestly, at this point, but more so for my own edification of like, I want to see what these kids are going through. Cause I watched a decent amount when it was on like Apple TV. And I think this year it's only exclusively going to be on the website for MLS Next Pro. But I want to make a concerted effort about this because we all should be giving these kids more attention, number one. But secondly, there's a lot of talent down there that nobody's talking about or thinking about. And again, I know we talked about this on the last show. The connections have to start being built from, with a very clear pathway from that level to the first team. And if there is too big of a gap there, I want to see what the front office is doing to try to figure out how to close that gap, right? Like, and if Ricardo, like you said, is showing up to OCB games, why can't I walk up to him one day and say, hey, so-and-so looks really good. They don't look like they're good enough to go to the first team. What's the plan? Like, do you guys mind sharing like what this player plans to do or what you want to do with this player? Are you impressed by them as well? What does that look like? Because I know he's a pretty personable guy, and I've had the opportunity, I think, to talk to him once a couple years ago when they did a preseason scrimmage at Osceola. I saw him there. But this was before he was like, CSO and all that kind of stuff and whatever. But like, that's a great opportunity for fans to even get FaceTime with some people maybe they don't see on a big match day and what it looks like. So, and again, like I've said a lot on Twitter especially, you're going to see some of the like lower end, and I don't mean that like negatively or anything, but a lot of the younger players on the first team roster are going to get an opportunity to play, to only really play a lot of minutes with OCB. So if you want to catch some of those guys who might eventually make a jump or maybe don't get a lot of playing time with the first team, this is a great opportunity to go out there and go see these guys. And they're, like I said, they're going to be a talented team with all the talent they've already grown, and then adding all the South American talent that they're going to have. Like Ellis and Pedro Leao are going to cook, man. Like, it's going to be a nasty, nasty lineup down there. And they've signed Heighton, and Tristan Himes has a long contract. Juan Rojas is down there. Platts is coming back off of injury. Just
Caraballo. Don't forget Caraballo.
Yeah, Caraballo is going to be down there. Sukata is probably going to get time down there this year as well. Like
Reed Brown will be out left back.
Yeah, this team's going to be
loaded.
I'm kind of hoping Reed Brown eventually overtakes Marin, but I think I'm dreaming a little bit there. But nonetheless,
my honest opinion, Reed Brown is he's where Alex was about 2 years ago. I'll put it down. Even though he's age-wise, he's older than Alex was 2 years ago, but I think he's skill-wise, he really struggles sometimes with the knowing when to take a player on, knowing when to get rid of the ball.
Yeah.
At least that's last year. I mean, he could come in. You saw and Alex was kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
2 years ago, he comes into OCB, and you're like, oh, cool, okay, and then he dominates, and then he gets, and then the rest is history. It could be the same thing this year. I mean, this is his 3rd/4th year on OCB. So, he's 21 this year, I believe. So, he's kind of getting there where the club's going to start looking to move him like they did with Thomas Williams.
Yeah.
I think kind of this year, if he takes that extra step and, and also is a little bit better with one-on-one defense, particularly in the press.
Yeah.
That will, that he'll start seeing more senior time, especially if we stick with the Marin experience.
I think too, and I think you might have brought this up, but I'd like to see, like, and maybe they use OCB for this, but like, I'd like to see if Taifi could potentially play full time there. I know he's more of a natural right back, but like, I think he's talented enough to potentially play either side. And if that's the case, I'd love to see OCB potentially early in the season utilize that time to see, hey, could we get Taifi to the level where he could be potentially a starting left back at the MLS level? Like,
which I definitely think he can, because he has played CDM, a 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he definitely can. I just haven't paid attention enough because he's almost always on the right side on OCB to see if he has any sort of left foot. Right. And even then, if you have a Spicer that's a wide winger anyway, left-footed winger, he could even tuck in a little bit and be almost an inverted, fullback on the, attacking fullback on the left side if he needed to be.
I'm just suggesting that because, like, if Reed Brown needs another year, let's say he needs another year, half a season, or whatever it is, I think Taifi's ready now. I think you kind of believe us over at LPO that he's got the talent to contribute now. If
Yeah.
that's the case, then like why not let him get some more work in at left back, which you know is an opportunity position right now. Get some work in with him at left back and just say, okay, you know, maybe in a couple of games he can overtake Marin because we just don't feel comfortable with
Hmm.
Marin and what it looks like. Because the other option that you have at this point is you go out and get a left back. But then again, a lot of the windows are closed and you don't have a lot of options there unless you're picking up like a Sam Vines who just got cut from Colorado. And I don't know if the club values Sam Vines at all or what that looks like. I haven't really asked anybody. But I just think, again, this is an opportunity, though, for youth to potentially plug a hole that this team has not had great luck with at all. Left
Yeah.
back has not been a position that they've been successful with. So why not try to figure out what that looks like? Because I think Taifi could be your answer there. I think Papi sees him maybe more as a Swiss Army player because he's lost, you know, Thor Halson and Kyle Smith and all these people. So maybe he wants Taifi to just be able to fill in wherever he needs to across the defense. But like, why not try to get him really good at one position and see if he can ball out, you
Yeah.
know, at a certain spot? I'd love for him to be able to confidently play left or right fullback, sort of like Kyle Smith was when he first came in, where you could play him on either side and you felt comfortable enough that he was going to do a job
Yeah.
for you and know that he could get it done. So I'd just
Yeah.
be
I mean,
interested to see.
he definitely has the talent to do it. You
Yeah.
know, like kind of like you're alluding to the understanding. Even though some people be like, "Oh, it's the same thing." It's somebody that played mainly right fullback and right midfielder
Right.
switching to the left. You just feel completely backwards.
Yeah. And you
And
view
that
the
was in
game
high school.
differently from that. Right.
That's not playing against grown men that do this for a living. That was in pretty low level high school.
Right. And the
That
game just
that
looks
I played.
different, right? From a different
Yeah,
spot. The game looks different. Your positioning has to be different, all that kind of stuff. So there
yeah,
is a lot that goes into it that I think people don't think about. And that's why I think he's not going to get enough of that in training. As much as Oscar would be able to scrimmage with it or whatever that looks like, I
hmm
think like why not use the first, I don't know, 3 OCB games maybe, just to pick a number? Why not use the first 3 OCB games and say, hey, Taifi, we're going to play you at left back. We want to see if we put you there for 90 minutes, 3 games in a row with OCB. Like, do you have the right positioning and, you know, awareness and everything else to confidently play left back? And then you can eventually still get Reed Brown on the field. You don't have to
yeah,
necessarily keep him completely off, but just like find a way to maybe like get him on the, because that's the other thing too, is that Otavio, I think, is going to spend some time there. Either Otavio or Gusky will spend some time down there as well. Whichever one's not playing, they'll go play down there. If Iago's not starting, I think he's going to spend some time down there as well as he starts to hone his craft. And honestly, what's really funny about that is I think he's going to dominate kids at that level. So it's going to be really, it's going to be really funny to see that mountain of a man just like bossing 16 and 17-year-olds,
yeah,
but you know, whatever. But it'll be great practice for all of them. So that's why you should be. Because I think the other thing that Reed Brown might be able to do is play the left side of a back 3. I think that's another position that he potentially might be able to play because he's a big kid. So like
hmm
there's a potential there that he could do that. Whereas I'm not as confident of somebody like Marin potentially playing the left side of a back 3,
yeah.
right? Like I know I've suggested that before, but after seeing him, you know,
No,
Saturday and then seeing him in preseason, I'm not convinced that that dude can do any 1v1 defending whatsoever at this point. Like I just don't think he has it. He's got a nice long throw, but that's about I think really all he's got. And
yeah.
he's
I
got
mean,
he's got some nice passes here and there where he can thread the ball through, but I just want to see more like challenge these kids a little bit more. If you don't think they're in the right spot or you've got a really athletic kid like a Taifi who can play in a different spot or like Caraballo tends to play the 10 when he's with the youth Venezuelan
mhm.
team, like start
And
experimenting with
the
that more.
academy teams when he's
Yeah,
with.
like start experimenting with that more. Like now that you're at this level, like see what this kid can do. Because right now we don't have a backup for Martino Heda. I'm sorry, but Atu Esto wasn't the answer when we played against Colorado. So
No,
like you got to
terrible.
find a backup 10 if you're going to play with a 10, unless you change formations, right? So like you
Yeah.
got to find something there to do that. And I think this is a perfect time to test the academy and the youth players and see what you have there and get the best guys on the field.
When you look at it from Poppy's standard or Poppy's perspective, is what do you have to lose at this point?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, if Marin's not working, from what I've seen from Marin and Reed,
Right.
their their skill set's a little different, but drop off wise, what you're not the drop off with Marin to Reed Brown isn't massive, you
Right.
know. And to me, Reed Brown's a little more adaptive because he's younger,
Sure.
you know.
He's coachable. He's
And
definitely more coachable.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I feel like he's a lot more athletic than Marin is, even though Marin's pretty athletic, but I just feel like Reed Brown's kind of in the same realm as Alex
Sure.
Freeman was as far as just being a freak athlete.
Yeah.
Um, I really think that sometimes you have to play the more athletic kid
Yeah.
and just let them go out there and figure it out, because he's obviously smart enough to make it as far as he has at a young age.
Sure.
See if he can, if you're against the ropes, and Marin goes down, you're going to need somebody to replace him
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
and if you're,
that's my question. That's my question too about like people like Platts, Judelson, and Archange. Like those are all guys too, where it's like I know they're technically like Judelson's a defensive midfielder, and then the other two are center backs. But like, are they center backs at the top level, or are they more fullbacks at the top level? Are they more CDMs at the top level? Like this should be the opportunity where you start to mix and
yeah,
match and figure out what these kids can give you, because I think one of them out of that group is only like 5'9". I don't think you're playing center back at 5'9" in MLS. I just don't
no,
think that's happening.
that's difficult. I know
So
Archange I believe he is more of a um out and out, like, um I'm looking his bio up right now. Of course, it doesn't have his height on the website.
sure, okay.
Um, but it doesn't have it on Foot Mob. Let me see. But I feel like if I recall correctly,
Mhm.
he's more of an out and out, like, no nonsense center back.
Okay,
Like he would be the one that you would be like, yeah, he's kind of like a Thomas Williams,
gotcha.
just that build, that bigger build. I don't think he's quite. I think he's more of the 6 foot range versus like a 6'3", 6'4", whatever Thomas
Sure.
is.
Yeah.
But you got to think with him, he's coming off of a probably his first significant injury of his playing career.
Yeah, so is Platts. Yeah, they're unfortunately
Yeah.
both yeah.
So it's it'll be interesting to see what they do, because they both have OCB contracts, or are they still technically academy?
They're both on
Yeah,
OCB contracts.
they get OCB. Okay,
But
okay.
they're lucky because like I was saying before, they've got the cover of like Iago's going to be available.
Mhm.
Once Johnson comes back, Nolan Miller technically would be available if Miller's not starting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they'll have a little bit of cover before they first come back. I know Titus Sandy Jr. can tuck inside if they need him to. He played there in college. I'm not convinced that he's a center back at this level, and again, I don't know how much longer he sticks around because he's already 24, so I just don't know how much he's got left there. But I'm just these are players though that we should automatically be testing out in different positions and seeing where they're at, because again, I don't think at the MLS level, I don't know that they're in the spots where they're gonna necessarily perform at the MLS level, especially like I said, one of them is 5'9". I can't remember what it is, and it's not Judelson, I can tell you that right now. Whichever one it is that's 5'9" is, I don't think they're going to play center back at the MLS level if they're 5'9" or whatever it is. So, so I think that's where you need to start testing it and seeing what it looks like. But then again, the other question is the roster's not final, so we have no idea what the OCB full roster is going to look like because they haven't put it out yet. So as soon as that does happen, I'd be curious to see kind of what that looks like or how much they have to borrow from the academy to get through the first part of the season.
And I don't even think rosters are due, what was it, May 1st or something like that? It's like still several months away, I think, for the senior teams to be finalized.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, it's just, really the bigger point though is that this academy has so much talent at this point. And again, like you said, like Oscar has nothing to lose. So if you're not trying some of these guys with your senior guys not making the cut, like if Marin has another bad game, because we know he's probably going to start against Miami. If he gets cooked against Miami, you have to start coming up with a different solution, because you can't continue to run that guy out there and hope that he's going to figure it out, because I just don't think at this point he's going to figure it out. And I think you have to just own up to the fact that it was a bad decision. You have to cut bait when you can cut bait and move on. But like to your point, if Reed Brown's not ready, you got to have another left back that's ready to go, because this team doesn't have another left back.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, sometimes athleticism takes over.
Yeah, that's true. And listen, we'd love an Alex Freeman jump if he's got it in him, for sure. But who knows?
But that remains to be said. So we're going long tonight, I know, for those watching and listening, but a lot to talk about. And David and I are the type of guys that can talk about this type of stuff for probably half a day and still feel like we left something out. But real quick, because the guys, I'm sure some people didn't hear. What are you looking for Sunday night? What do you think? Kind of your predictions. What are you hoping to see? Type of deal.
Yeah, I think more than anything, we got to be competitive. Like more, like we just can't be played off the field at all. Like any point, like the Red Bull game, we just got to be competitive. Obviously, against a rival, I want to win. I'm not going to settle for anything else. You beat your rivals. That's the name of the game. I don't care if you go, 1-33. You find the win against your rivals, and you figure, well, 2-32. Sorry, because you play them twice, but still, nonetheless, you go 2-32, and whatever. But if we can't win, it needs to be a draw and it needs to be competitive from the first whistle to the last whistle. And if it's a loss or a serious loss, questions have to be asked. Like serious questions. There can't be any more Papi defenders. There can't be any of that. Questions have to be asked if this team does not come out with a draw or a win. It's just as simple as that to me.
Cool. Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us tonight, David.
Absolutely.
Emergency
My pleasure.
situation, literally texted him, chatted him, whatever, on X, and was like, "Hey, I don't think Luke's going to make it. Are you going to be able to jump in?" And it was like 15 minutes before the main show ended, and we record this shortly after that. I take a little bit of a break to get a drink and stretch my legs, and he was able to do it. So we do appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Love having you on. For those people watching us, said it every week. If you want to, leave your comment, if you have something to add, something you think we got wrong, just your opinion in general, whether it's different from ours, same as ours. Please let us know if you want to join us on the show, for a bit, join us for a full episode, join us without your face on it. We'll even, I'll even walk you through how to change your voice if you don't want to be known on the show and you just want to chime in with your opinions. Let us know. That's how David got on here. He reached out to David Valentin and we started talking. So, let us know. We'll let you on here no matter what you have to say. Make sure to follow the in 90 Minutes on all of our socials. It's in 90 Minutes Pod or in 90 Minutes Podcast. If you just type in 90 Minutes, it should come up. We're everywhere: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitch. Just give us a follow, subscribe to us there. Keep a lookout for Saturday this week for our match day -1 preview of the upcoming match and what to look for and what some key points of that match could be. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Vamos, Orlando.